14, 2013 meeting of the East Penn School District Board of School Directors for Cook come to order. Please rise and join me in the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is request to address the board. I have a number of Nope. All right, the first item on the agenda that I have is request to address the board. I have a number of requests to address the board. Citizens are reminded that they have 3 minutes. It would be helpful if you had anything written that you could give it to the board secretary so that we don't have to frantically take notes while you're talking. But we also ask that if somebody else has already covered the subject material, you try to keep your comments to things that are new and fresh on the matter at hand, since it's all on the same subject. First person I have is Anthony Garcia of Macungie, speaking about Willow Lane busing.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Garcia from Macungie. So I've been here now for 4 meetings, trying to get some resolution on the Willow Lane busing decision. And I know there was a survey put out, so I'm hoping that we have some good responses from that from parents. Just wanted to call to everybody's attention that in the last couple of weeks there have been a couple more accidents on that intersection. So I'm hoping that some more attention is being put towards that, and that we keep considering our children's safety and we make the right decision, so we can just stop wasting our time and moving forward with what might be a little bit more important for the town. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. The next name I have is Jonathan Berger of Macungie, speaking on Willow Lane busing.
Good evening, my name is Jonathan Berger. I'm a father of a student at Willow Lane School, and I have another one that will be starting in a couple of years. And I've spoken a few times regarding the Willow Lane busing. As Anthony mentioned, I wanted to echo the sentiment that it needs to stay at the forefront of our discussion. I was here at the December 10th meeting. Since that event, there's been, I believe, 3 accidents at the intersection of Willow and Sauerkraut. So it's clearly not a safe intersection. So we want to make sure that if we do go forward with removing busing, we have everything in place. Since that meeting also, as you are well aware, a sobering incident occurred, at an elementary school exactly 1 month ago in Connecticut. Now, I'm not drawing a parallel to what we have here, but the underlying theme is children's safety. One of the things we discussed with the new plan was now we might be able to disregard the checkout procedure and let kids walk freely out of the school without having a parent or guardian to sign them out. So I just want to make sure that we have the children's safety as a #1 priority. We need to have everything locked down and written out, and we need a committee with the parents and the PTO, yourselves, the township, everybody involved in the planning, and make a decision that has children's safety at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you. The next name I have is Matthew Mull of Macungie, speaking on Willow Lane busing.
Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to hear us out. I'm just going to make a quick personal anecdote. This is my 3rd meeting now I've come to this, and meeting with other neighbors. And to be honest, my wife and I had quite a heated discussion about, after the last meeting, she really thought that I was overreacting. As only a husband and wife can argue back and forth. So basically, she said, "Well, put your money where your mouth is. When was the last time you walked your dog? When was the last time?" You've been there. And I said, "Well, I run." And she's like, "You're running at 5:30, 6 in the morning." So between the holiday and the flexibility of my schedule, I've taken the opportunity to change my route or my time to run at the same time that these kids will be walking. wearing the same jacket that I wear today, and I can assure you I am not breaking a 4-minute mile when I do run. In the last, I've run about 11 or 12 times now, and I've, without earphones, trying to be, basically put myself in the situation that these kids do, or will be, in walking. Rainy days, sunny days, somewhat cloudy, different conditions. In the a dozen times or so that I've run, I've had 2 cars have a short stop for me crossing the intersection, at which point, I had stopped at the intersection, saw them slowing down, started jogging across the intersection. In one case, I definitely saw the one driver having a phone in her hand, texting or doing something with it. The other guy, I don't know, I can't say what he was or wasn't doing. But it just seems to be an inherent danger. The first one was at the actual Willow Lane, the other one was at the Mill Creek intersection, both where sauerkraut and they cross. So again, I'm not saying this is scientifically accurate or statistically accurate, but just my own personal experience in the last month since the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Manal Namani of McCountry speaking on Willow Lane busing.
Good evening, everyone. This is my second time attending the school board meeting, and thanks to the Willow Lane busing issue that we are all being attracted to this meeting. I would like to thank Dr. Moyer for the monkey survey also, and I guess you would have probably already noticed that 90 to 95% of the parents in that survey would have mentioned that they're going to not walk the kids, but they're going to drop them. I would like to reiterate my point, which I had made last month's school meeting also, that 1.5 mile distance walking for elementary kids is way too much. At my house intersection, there is a bus stop. I notice all the parents. There are kids from 5th grade to kindergarten. None of the kids are allowed to walk. Most of the parents, 99% of the parents, they walk kids, even from their home to the school bus stop, which is just a block away. Some of them doesn't even have an intersection to cross. Some of them have maybe one intersection to cross. The bus has a flashing light. That means that we don't trust those crazy drivers when the kids are boarding. That's only for the particular intersection where the bus is stopping. From my house to Willow Lane, my kids are going to be crossing 7 intersections. So probably the best thing is, if at all they're walking one day in a year, I should just give them a flashing light so that everyone knows that they are supposed to stop. We are asking all these elementary kids to be aware at each and every intersection, look both ways, which is a way too big expectation from an elementary kid student. Again, from the survey, they would have noticed that 90% of the parents would be carpooling. We talked about opening up the window for dropping kids from 8:30 to 9, but let's be realistic. Most of the parents, even though we say 8:30 to 9, it's not like we're going to be divided, 8:30 to 8:40, these parents are going to drop and so on. Most of them would be rushing. We all rush for work. They would be rushing to drop the kid because the kid is going to be late for school, and then they have to drop kid, get back to work. So now they are double rushing. So we are again putting the light of our kids, whoever are even walking or even in the car. This is an open invitation for more car accidents. So I would like to urge school board, please, before making any harsh decision, please consider each and every minute fact, because this is putting our kids on the road, and it's really the safety of kids. And the amount which I heard last month meeting, it's really very, very small amount compared to the safety of the kids we are putting on. So please consider all these facts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mani. Next name I have is Lee LaRussa of McCountry, speaking on Willow Lane busing.
Thank you all for letting me speak. I spoke at Woodrow at your last meeting, and I've been to a few of these now. Since the last meeting, I had a chance to attend the Lower McCountry Township Public Safety Commission meeting, and I want to thank them here in your presence for allowing us to speak at their meeting. but more so for their willingness to engage in a discussion with the parents that attended that meeting about our safety concerns. They seem to have as many concerns and questions about the plan to eliminate buses as we did, which was a little concerning and surprising. Some voiced concern that the school district was moving quickly without knowing all the full implications of safety and traffic. And a few even said that they considered themselves Sauerkraut Lane to be a dangerous road and couldn't see how the walkability study reached the conclusions that it did. But nonetheless, they were in support of helping to try to do what they could as the commission to make it safe for kids if there weren't going to be buses. Last month when I was here, I quoted some studies looking about what were actual walking distances, and I won't go through all that again, but I'll just remind you that a 1.5 mile radius is a guarantee to increase the amount of car traffic that's going to be going around the neighborhoods and roads that clearly is not equipped to handle if you look at all the information beyond just the walkability study. And the walkability study looks good on the surface, but it really just doesn't go any deeper than that when you look at how accurate and useful it is for the reality. So I'm going to stand by my recommendation to you all that 3/4 of a mile is a much more realistic radius when you can consider then the appropriate number of cars and walkers and who would be bused. Many of us have suggested to you all that you include parents in your discussions and plans for the new transportation plan. And I think you'd find it very useful to have parents and community members on board and in communication with you rather than us coming up and just sort of saying without any kind of dialogue. And frankly, after having been to the Public Safety Commission and seeing a dialogue take place and how fruitful it was, the protocols of the board here at these meetings is a bit frustrating as a parent, as a community member. It really doesn't, promote transparency or dialogue with us, and that makes it hard to blindly trust what you're telling us our kids are going to be doing. So, again, I'd like to see our involvement with you all and possibly like a separate committee or whatever the proper role would be through the board. But please consider that. Many of us here would be happy to volunteer to offer our thoughts and help wherever we could. Thank you.
Thank you. Next name I have is Susan Conan of Macungie, speaking on Willow Lane Transportation.
Hi, again, my name is Susan Coonan, and I have 2 children who attend Willow Lane. I have a kindergartner and a 2nd grader. Before I talk about the transportation issue, I first wanted to say thank you. Like many parents, we were all shocked and dismayed by what happened in Newtown, Connecticut. And I have to say that I was really pleased and impressed with the way the school board in Dr. Seidenberger's message that came to us. And also at Willow Lane, Dr. Moyer left a voicemail telling us and assuring us as parents that our children would be safe and cared for when they returned to school after that tragic event. And also, I think the responsiveness of the school district when it came to the bomb threat that was received at Maize High School. Again, the responsiveness, putting the safety of the students first. As a parent, I appreciate that, so thank you. As you know, I've been here twice to talk to you about the transportation issue at Willow Lane. And I have to say that I'm very encouraged by the signs that I've seen over the past several weeks and the progress that has been made. Mr. LaRussa referred to the Public Safety Commission meeting in Lower Macungie Township. I was there as well. I also attended the Board of Commissioners meetings. And I know that the Lower Macungie Township Manager, Bruce Fosselman, has started a dialogue with you guys to figure out the best way to make the changes in the township. Another area that I'm excited to see some progress is a bus student count that was initiated, I believe, on the morning of January 7th. As my children got on the bus for school, the driver was checking off their names. But I do have to say I was surprised. I didn't know this was coming. And when I inquired why it was being done, the bus driver told me the school district had requested it. And as various parents in different developments compared notes, a lot of questions arose. Things like, is the bus count for students who only get on the bus in the morning? Was dismissal counted as well? What about midday kindergarten counts? Is the bus count only for Willow Lane students? One bus driver said it was also for Alberta's, Jefferson, and Lincoln. When did the count begin? When will it end? Why are the students being counted? Is it part of the Willow Lane transportation issue? What do you hope to find, and when will the results be made public? And again, I just wanted to say that I wish parents could have been notified that this was taking place. just in the spirit of cooperation and wanting to know and participate and help with the development of the transportation strategy for Willow Lane. I also want to commend the Willow Lane for creating the survey. I was impressed that we received 2 Edulin calls, although I actually only received 1, but that's another story. And also a flyer came home with both of my students to publicize and let us know the survey was there. I do have to say, though, as a parent, I wish I had been given the chance and would have welcomed the opportunity to give my feedback on the survey before it was made public, just to offer a parent's perspective. For example, there was one instruction I think that was omitted that was necessary.
Ms. Penn, could you wrap it up? You've passed your 3 minutes.
Okay. I'll just leave with this one point then. I would question the validity of the results of the survey because it wasn't clear if it was to be filled out one survey per household. I know that several parents inadvertently may have filled it out twice or possibly more. Thank you.
The next person I have is Tammy Ritter of Macungie, speaking on Willow Lane busing.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank you for the walkability study. I attended the meeting where that was presented to Willow Lane parents. However, I'm concerned about the potential lack of follow-through regarding its recommendations. While Lower Macungie Township has made it known that they've budgeted money for school zone signs, other recommendations found in the study have not yet been addressed. While some, such as pruning trees, may easily be taken care of, others, such as improving crosswalks, will require additional funding and time. Will these upgrades be completed or will they be forgotten and ignored? Who will pay for them? Where's the timeline for when the work will be completed? Considering that we're in our 3rd year at Willow Lane and we still don't have school zone signs, these are pertinent questions that must be answered before we make any decisions regarding busing. In addition, I'm concerned that although the walkability study did look at infrastructure, it didn't address traffic concerns. In a superintendent's report, the board was assured that Sauerkraut Lane is not dangerous. However, I would urge each of you to travel Sauerkraut Lane starting at Route 100 and going to the intersection with Mill Creek. It's 1.4 miles and there are no stop signs. There's a reason why some residents call it the Sauerkraut Superhighway. I know of no other students in the district who are being asked to walk along a stretch of road where cars travel at high speeds, unchecked by stop signs. Try going the marked speed limit of 25 miles per hour and see how long it takes before you have a line of cars behind you. Finally, I'd like to point out a problem that's specific to my neighborhood, which is Brookside Farms. Last summer, utility work was being done along Willow Lane, and many drivers used my neighborhood as a shortcut to get from Willow to Sauerkraut, thus avoiding the construction. This increase in traffic was very real. Because of it, state troopers were stationed at Weekland Drive, off and on throughout the utility work. The same drivers who sought to avoid construction will likely seek to avoid crossing guards, sending more traffic through my neighborhood at exactly the time when our children are being asked to walk to school. There will be no crossing guards in the neighborhood. Children will be asked to fend for themselves, just as the greater volume of traffic travels along those roads. I respectfully ask the school board to consider investigating the funding, the timeline, and the traffic concerns that need to be addressed before Willow Lane students can be expected to walk to and from school. Thank you.
Thank you. Next name I have is Patrick Armstrong of Macungie, speaking on Willow Lane busing and half-day Wednesdays.
Thank you, members of the board. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do want to reiterate all the residents in the Macungie, Lower Macungie Township area that are opposed to this elimination of the busing at Willow Lane. I don't think the planning was appropriately provided for such a decision, and a decision to take it out of the budget without having the appropriate planning in place to ensure that the safety of our students are in place, I think is inappropriate. That being said, I do also find it interesting that later in your agenda I see a tax increment financing resolution for this board to act upon, I believe tonight. I just find it interesting that the main reason put forth by this board to eliminate busing at Willow Lane was to save money, while at the same time I see a resolution on your agenda this evening with respect to a tip. And if anyone, I'm assuming you're all aware of what a tip is. It's basically you're potentially sacrificing the tax dollars of this district for a private commercial development. And if you think that's appropriate, that's fine. I just want to make sure that everyone on this board is aware of what that tip would be doing. That being said, I don't want to focus all my time on that. I'm going to bring up another potential issue that I've been thinking about. With respect to the busing as well, I have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, and when that 4-year-old is 5, he's going to be attending Willow Lane. He will not be walking the approximate 1.5 miles by himself as a 5-year-old kindergarten student to get to that school. I or my wife or someone in our development will be driving him. And if you think that that traffic is not going to have a negative impact on not only this township, these roads, and this school, I think you have a significant surprise in place for you. That being said, the other issue I'm here for tonight is the half-day Wednesday. Very interesting topic. I moved to this district a few years ago. We didn't have kids, obviously 4 and 3, but now I'm starting to learn about this whole 3-day or half-day Wednesday, and I'm just going to present to you certain things that I've found. It's amazing what you can find on the web these days. A lot of things are accessible, and I want to make sure, I don't want to misrepresent anything, so if I do, please step in and tell me that I'm wrong. But it's my understanding that on Wednesdays, students are dismissed at 1:30. Okay? That's 2 hours early on Wednesdays. Approximately 180 days in the school year. That's a fifth of the total days per year. A fifth of the total days comes to approximately 36. 36 Wednesdays in a school year. 36 times 2, 2 hours being the early dismissal, is 72 hours. 72 hours a year, our students are losing instructional time. 72 hours a year, that's the equivalent of 11 days. When you take into account the 72 hours a year and consider 1st through 5th grade, that's 360 hours. That's the equivalent of 55 days. 55 days of instructional time between the grades of 1st and 5th grade. 55 days. That's a third of a 180-day school year. That being said, I'm not aware of any neighboring district that has this half-day Wednesday, half-day whatever during the week. Parkland, Southern Lehigh, Northwestern Lehigh, any of the neighboring districts, I am not aware of any such practice in this immediate area, Lehigh Valley or Upper Bucks County. That being said, it's also, and again, please interrupt if I'm incorrect.
You have about 30 seconds left.
I appreciate that. None of those neighboring districts that provide full-day instruction are on the warning list under AYP, AYP being the No Child Left Behind. East Penn School District, it's my understanding that you are on the warning list. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. That being said, I've also looked at your collective bargaining agreement. It's my understanding that the option to remove that half-day Wednesday is well within the control of this board under your collective bargaining agreement. It's also my understanding that in 2013, that collective bargaining agreement is going to be opened up and negotiated between, it is not? Okay, that's the first shade of it. Okay, I understand I'm probably beyond my time.
Mr. Stoltz, please.
I do understand that this is not interactive. I do understand that. What I will ask is if this board is intending to discuss either the Willow Lane busing or the half-day Wednesdays at the end of the meeting, could you please let me know? Because if you do, I will stay for the entire meeting. Okay, thank you.
The next name I have is Melissa Huffer of McConkey, speaking on Willow Lane Transportation.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Huffer. I live in the Graymore subdivision. I am a working mother of 3 girls. 2 currently attend Willow Lane. My third will be entering Willow Lane in 2014. I also have concerns about busing issues. First and foremost, as many parents have voiced, safety is the first priority. The lack of signage, crosswalks, outdated traffic studies, exceptionally long distance, the lack of safety procedures for arrival and dismissal at school, children having to negotiate the elements for bad weather, sidewalk clearing, etc. have all been mentioned, and I'm pretty positive this is just brushing the surface. I know it's not the job of the school board to ensure my well-being, but I'm not the only one with these concerns. I received a survey of whether or not I would allow my children to walk to school. The answer is no. I live 1.3 miles from school. My children will log 2.6 miles a day. I will log 5.2. But when my third attends Willow Lane, I will walk 7.8 miles per day back and forth to school. This equates to 39 miles per week. I am a runner, I am healthy, I am not obese. However, working those 39 miles into my work schedule is absolutely an unrealistic thing for me to do. I was asked if I would be interested in a walking school bus. The answer again is no. After sitting in school for 8 hours, even the most disciplined elementary age school child is not able to safely navigate 1.3 miles without distraction. Ask any teacher if 10 children can walk from the classroom to the cafeteria without an issue. They don't have the mental focus or clarity to do this. If any of you have children or grandchildren, you can't argue this point. I'm going to have a hard enough time managing my 3 girls. How am I going to take responsibility for 1.3 miles and take somebody else's kids under my wing? The last question I was asked to discuss was whether or not I'd be interested in carpooling. With the laws banning children from sitting in the front seat and legal requirements for booster seats and car seats, once my kids are loaded up, I don't have any room for anybody else. I have no space for other children, I don't drive a van, and my babysitter also has 3 kids of her own. So now I'm not the only working mom. This is going to be an issue for parents. I can honestly say that the buses provide not only safety but peace of mind. I don't worry about them getting on and off the bus. I have no concerns about stranger danger. With hundreds of kids getting out of school and no safeguards in place for dismissal, no one is going to notice if a child is approached by a stranger. They're not going to notice if a kid gets pulled into a car. Somebody's going to think, oh, it's their neighbor, it's their friend, it's a parent. The bus system allows me to work and pay my taxes. It allows my children to safely get to and from school. Safety is the first priority, but the decision will impact the lives and financial stability of many parents. Your decision may require me to quit a job I love very much. I know that all of you have compassion and understanding, and that's why I would like to extend an invitation to all of you. I am personally inviting each of you to join myself and my 3 children for 3 round trips back and forth from my home to Willow Lane School.
Ms. Huffer, would you wind it up?
Absolutely. As an occupational therapist, I teach my patients to learn by doing, and I don't ask them to do anything I would not do myself. I think a nice snowy day in February would be a great time. You bring your boots, and I'll have coffee ready. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. The last name I have this evening is Todd Solomon from McCungie, speaking about Willow Lane busing.
Good evening. My name is Todd Solomon. I'm a Willow Lane parent of 3 children that will be put at risk by the proposed plan or lack of plan to eliminate buses. I've heard repeatedly that Willow Lane was built as a walking school, but the design of the school and coordination with Lower McCungie Department of Transportation has shown otherwise. If Willow Lane was planned as a walking school, why has this board not been up in arms about a lack of signage since August of 2010? Why has it taken the same group of parents to plead and beg the board for over a year to get this discussion going? I have never seen an elementary school that, at the minimum, does not have a school zone sign posted in front of it. I know that there's now plans to put a few road signs to improve safety, but those plans fall far short of what's needed. Children from Braymore are asked to walk 1.5 miles one way and are expected to cross both Mill Creek, a 35-mile-per-hour road, and Sauerkraut, 2 busy intersections, plus 4 intersections along Sauerkraut and several inside the development. There are currently only plans to add crossing guards to one of these intersections. According to the Pennsylvania Traffic Injury Prevention Project, between 450 and 600 children are killed annually in pedestrian traffic accidents. Do you know why? Drivers backing out of driveways cannot see small people. Do you know how many driveways are in a 1.5 mile radius that kids will cross in front of? Now, I know it's been mentioned that a lot of other schools have walking and they have no problems. for example, Emmaus. But they have a different setup with roads. They have side street parking, we have driveways. In the walk from down Sauerkraut, there's a lot of direct line of traffic, and there's many driveways along that route. Not to mention that people will be rushing out of their driveways and cutting through side streets to avoid the increased local traffic. Up until now, it has appeared that most of the board ran with the primary focus of preventing taxes from increasing. I understand the current economic environment requires us to stretch budgets, but saving a few dollars literally should not come as a priority above children's safety. More than one member of the safety committee that addressed Willow Lane parents during the presentation of the walkability study, including a state trooper and retired police officer, stated that they personally would not let their children walk to Willow Lane. But you expect us to allow our children to walk that same route. I'm addressing this board to request that you shift your priority to children's safety rather than saving a few bucks. What's really more important? Thank you.
Thank you. I have no more requests to address the board at this time. So we'll move on to approval of the minutes. I have a motion, please.
No move.
Is there any discussion? Ms. Donchek.
Yes, I just wanted to mention the spelling of bud coats is B-U-D-D.
And it's been noted. Any other additions or corrections or comments? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes are approved. We're now for that fun time of year when we get to hear Ms. Sertable from our business department give us a 5-year budget outlook. Ms. Sertable.
Thank you. I'm going to have Mr. James Frank, who we call Jim, hand out copies of the outlook presentation to all the board members, and I want to introduce Jim to all of you. Jim's been in our office a number of years now. He's the assistant business manager, and he's a CPA, and he works very long hours. He's often working over there while we're having the board meetings, and lately he's been coming to the board meetings, so I wanted to introduce him to you. Budget outlook, which we normally do in either December or January, depending on the timeline of the state capital for us.
Can you move the microphone, please?
So tonight, on the agenda, you'll see that we have a resolution not to exceed the index. Then March 25th, we hand out the budget notebooks to the board for the proposed final budget for 2013-14. Then in May, we have to adopt a proposed final budget on May 13th. And it has to be advertised for the public to review and respond to. And then we have to adopt our final budget on June 24th for 2013-14.
Ms. Sertable, that's because we are taking the route of not exceeding the index. That's why this timeline applies, correct?
Correct. I mean, normally the last 3 items will be in effect no matter what. We still have to do the May and June, and we still have a March notebook. But instead of doing a preliminary budget, we were planning to say that we will not exceed the index.
The history of our millage increases versus the Act 1 index, which we're limited by law, is in front of you. So for 2008, 2009, our millage increased 4.4%, and the Act 1 index was 4.4%. 2009-10, our millage increased 3.24%, while the Act 1 index was 4.1%. Both those years, we did not apply for exceptions to exceed the index, which we can do, but there were certain qualifications you had to meet, and those qualifications have gotten much more strict in the last few years. 2010-11, our millage went up 3.85%. The Act 1 index was 2.9%. We did apply for exceptions to exceed the index, and we qualified to be allowed to increase our tax millage by 5.02%, but we actually went up 3.85. 2011-12, the index was 1.4%. We applied for exceptions. We were approved by PDE for 4.79% index increase, and we actually increased 1.83%. 2012-13, the Act 1 index was 1.7%. We applied for exceptions. We were approved, which could have allowed us to increase our millage by 2.91%, and we actually only increased it 1.3%. When you apply for exceptions and are granted approvals for them, it means that those things, there are certain things that you're allowed to apply for, and those things went up by more than the amount of the index. So there's justification. The dollar value of the exceptions that we applied for and were approved for in 2011 and 2012 are shown. The special ed is one of the areas that we've gotten approvals for because it went up significantly higher than the index, which last year was 1.7%. The retirement contributions are also exceeding the index, so we were granted exceptions for that. So the total of our approved exceptions for 2011-12 was $2,658,607, which meant that we could have generated that much more than the index in taxes by that dollar amount. That's what that means. In 2012-13, we were approved for exceptions of $933,698. The exceptions that we actually used with the millage that we approved in 2011-12 was $325,374. So we had $2,333,233 that we could have used and did not. So we did not raise that much in extra taxes that we could have. In 2012-13, we decided not to use the exceptions that we qualified for. So the whole $933,698 went unused. For 2013-14, the index is 1.7% again, the same as it was for this year, 2012-13. Because of the countywide reassessment, even if the state had set a different index of like 2.5%, we would have been stuck at the 1.7% so that we could come up with an equalized millage. State and federal funding is unknown. As you know, the state has not come out with their budget, and we're usually lucky if they adopt it by June 30th like they're supposed to. The governor should come out with something in February that will give us some indications of what his proposal is. Federal, we know what's going on with that, so who knows what kind of federal funding we'll get. For the most part, we've kept it pretty much flat going across projections, and the same with the state. Countywide reassessments. Lehigh County did a reassessment, as everyone should be aware of by now. So some people's taxes will go up and some will go down, even if we put in equalized mill, because everybody had their home reevaluated and their business reevaluated on an equal playing field. So some of the older homes often have an increase because they were really paying less than they would have otherwise over the years with the assessments the way they were, because we hadn't had assessment for a long time. And there are other families that are in the opposite situation. We also have a large number of court appeals. The county sent out letters to us saying that starting in March, they're going to have some meet and discuss meetings with a lot of businesses that have Court of Common Pleas appeals going on, so we're not sure when those cases will be settled. We still have some appeals actually from 2010 that we're just giving refunds for tonight because the county just got the information to us from settlements back in July and August. And now we're required to give refunds because of lowered assessments by the court. Earned income tax, new collector 2012. Berkheimer was established as the Lehigh County earned income tax collector based on the Act 32 law that was passed. So previously we had 5 different earned income tax collectors. So starting January 2012, Berkheimer was supposed to be that collector, but there's a delay with earned income tax that companies send in for their employees, and actually we wound up collecting a lot of money through even June of 2012 from the old collectors in addition to the new collectors. So we don't have a really good idea of what to expect for an income tax collection. The employee contracts, we had saved a lot of money last year and this year by the employees taking a pay freeze the first year, and then most of them also had some kind of concession in the second year, and then their contracts were extended. So now they're on an earlier schedule. The retirement rate is going up 37% for the next year's budget. So that's a big factor. But I want to say that the employees also contribute to the retirement system, around 7%. And a lot of the reason that the retirement rate is going up is because, first of all, it's actuarially set. The state lets us know what we have to contribute. And it had been going down. The investments were doing great. And they lowered the rate, and the state didn't want to have to pay extra money, so they lowered it, and then it got artificially too low, and now it's climbing. But that will be leveling off. And I know that the governor's also working on some kind of change that he wants to make to that system. He did a study, and we'll find out probably in February what he's suggesting. For state sources, the only reason they're mainly up in the 5-year forecast is because of expenditures for the retirement payments based on the state's half that they have to contribute for our employees, and for the state's share of Social Security, which they also contribute for our employees. Otherwise, the main state revenues, basic education, and other items were kept flat across the 5-year projection. We had a positive fund balance, our change last year, and main reasons for that are debt service. We spent $1,379,229 less in 11-12 than we budgeted because of refinancing and low interest on our variable debt. Earned income tax was also a big reason because we received $1,037,890 more in 11-12 than we budgeted, because we were told to expect a lag with the switch in the collectors, as I discussed. That was started in January 2012, yet we were still getting a lot of earned income tax from the old collectors through June of 2012. Another reason that we had a positive balance was rental and sinking fund revenue from the state, which exceeded the budget in 11-12 by $994,270 due to a $1,250,294 that we received in unbudgeted funds for Plan Con J one-time final project reimbursements. Most of this was for debt service paid in prior years, and Mr. Frank had a lot to do with applying for those Plant Con Day funds, which we received. Charter school tuition costs had been a major factor. As you can see, the growth here from 01-02 through 12-13 budget. But we've actually seen some drop-off in the number of charter school students this year, especially in the cyber schools. So we're not projecting as much of an increase next year in the budget. And we're not sure what to expect for the future beyond that, because we know some new charter schools have opened. And 7 Generations keeps adding a grade each year, so there's a lot of uncertainty there. And it's a major cost. As you can see, it's over $3.5 million. We also used to get a reimbursement from the state for up to 30% of our charter school costs, which the state decided to do away with. That's lost revenue. Other items that we want to monitor for the 2013-14 budget: the enrollment is starting to increase, especially the special ed students. The transportation contract has a built-in increase, and we're looking into Willow Lane and other ways that we could save money on transportation like some other districts in the area are. We have few retirements that we expect this year, so we'll have to wait and see if more come about. But normally retirements give us some savings by replacing the higher paid teachers with lower paid teachers. In summary, this is a constantly moving worksheet that I handed out to the board. As you know, we always say that it's obsolete the day that it goes out, because the next day we make changes based on new information. It's just a snapshot of where we look at this point in time. We stayed well under the index last year, even though we qualified for exceptions to exceed the index. And our ending fund balance was significantly higher than budgeted last year, which will allow us to stay within the index in 2013-14 by spending it down some. And we're also approaching the budget differently and allowing less to be budgeted in areas that were not spent last year, and taking a close look at what happened in those areas. We'll continue to examine line items and revenues and make adjustments that will be reflected in the March 25th budget draft presentation to try to keep taxes as low as possible without cutting our programs. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Serval. Dr. Seidenberg, if you want to say anything first, or do you want to open up for questions first? People have questions for Ms. Serval on her presentation tonight. Mr. Bacher.
So I see that in terms of equalized millage, we're going up 1.7 this year and then moving by 2% in following years. But the real estate, the actual income from the real estate tax is going up significantly in 2014, 15, and beyond. Is that assuming
A little bit higher index as well as increased assessments. Because we're expecting some more growth in the coming years based on things that we're seeing.
things that are in the pipeline, developments in the pipeline? Okay, so that's based on. I also have questions on a lot of people's minds. What's the status of the Willow Lane, the transportation regarding Willow Lane in this budget? Is it included in this budget? And it would be a savings if we removed it, or is it not included? And so we're constrained by the index.
Mr. Bacher, this isn't a budget. This is just a projection.
I know. I'm wondering, well, I'm sorry, but we're going to, should I wait then until we talk about the not to exceed? I'm just wondering I'm assuming that the assumption not to exceed the index is based on the projections right now. Is that not the case?
Yes.
That's the case, yes.
So I'm just asking, I can ask it when we discuss Resolution 5.
We have $60,000 was removed from the budget for transportation based on the savings that we would have. But there's a study that's in the works that will determine what we actually do and whether we'll really say that or what the figure will be. These are just very preliminary numbers.
So
There are a lot
I
of
guess
things
the
to
bottom
consider.
line I'm asking, do we have flexibility? Maybe I should ask this when we're doing the not to exceed resolution, but I realize it's a small amount relative to the total budget. Just wondering-
Dr. Seidenberger would like to address that.
I'd love to address that. At this point, we've met with every department head, and we've made some assumptions, but I can tell you that the world is ever changing, and I speak routinely about special education. I have no idea what's going to walk through our door in the next couple of weeks. It's always a surprise. We have no idea what the governor is going to give us in state aid. We are very concerned about growth in enrollments. I think last month, when we got our enrollment count, we went up by 9, and then all of a sudden that disappeared, and now we're back up again. So we'll take a look at it. We're constantly talking to our leaders about textbooks, needs, and things like that. So the budget that we even will produce to you on March will certainly have some changes before we adopt the final budget. That's just the way it is. We work really hard at getting accurate information, and I don't think it's going to be any differently this year. And as I think Mrs. Serval was indicating, we're going to be looking at, I'll hit the transportation thing right head on. I think last year, when I look back at our notes, on March 27th last year, we said we will look at all elements of transportation. I want to assure the parents of Willow Lane that we're not just speaking about Willow Lane, but I can tell you this, that we're looking at every route. We basically going in and looking at our buses, our bus capacity, see if we're more efficient. We're even looking at runs for 7 generations in St. Anne's, and I think there's some area where we can improve. Plus the fact that we've also been talking to some other school districts about what we might want to do about high school. We're very impressed with what's going on in Parkland and Nazareth, and as part of our report, we're going to make some recommendations. So you may get to consider that, and if you look at something like that, I can tell you that there would be considerable savings on top of that. We just don't know. So I think what Mrs. Serval is trying to tell you, that this is our best thinking on tonight, January 14th.
I apologize, and really my question is related to the next item on the agenda.
Sure. Other questions for Ms. Serval? None appearing. Thank you very much, and welcome to the busy season in the business department. All right. We will go on to item number 5, the not to exceed resolution.
So moved. Second.
All right. Dr. Seidenberger, do you want to speak on that?
I think just want to dovetail what Mr. Serval said. This year we've looked long and hard at what we've been doing the last 2 years, and I think we did the prudent thing. We've asked for exceptions, and I see, her figures. Certainly 2 years ago we didn't use $23 million. Last year we didn't use a single dollar. And I think we've been very prudent with our spending, and I think we will continue to do so. So I think going around the table, I think we felt comfortable enough that we could just bypass that step this year, end some of the drama, some of the discussions that seem to go on and on about a big tax increase versus a minimum of the exception. So we're pretty comfortable making a recommendation tonight. And I will say this, as we do every year, no matter what the circumstances are, we will continue to look at each and every line item, and where we feel we can make a savings, we will do that. And we'll get to a point, and that's what we'll recommend. But I think this year it's a little bit of good news that we're not going to ask for the exceptions.
Comments on the motion, Mr. Bacher.
So I guess my question is, I just want to, I know we always seem to do a good job of doing better than the first plan, and I just want to make sure that by approving the not to exceed, we're not locking ourselves into any situation with regard to Willow Lane or anything else.
I think we have
talked
enough.
about a lot of things that might the issues causing the budget to raise, and I just want to make sure we have the flexibility.
Once we make this commitment tonight, the onus is on us to produce a budget that makes sense, and we'll do that. I mean, we're taking a leap of faith tonight because we have no idea what the governor's going to do. But our promise to you is we're going to try to be as fiscally prudent as we can, and our goal, like every other year, is to maintain all of our programs. Now, at some point, we may come back to you, like we did last year, and give you a list of potential cuts. But right now, tonight, I can confidently tell you that I think we'll be able to do mostly everything we set out to do, which is maintain all of our programs. Now, will we have some tweaks? Am I concerned about enrollment increases? Of course I am. But in a budget this large, we have in the past, if we've had to hire a teacher or two, we've done it. And we've made the alterations. People asking us some other strategies. Well, if you remember, not last year, but the year before, we froze our budget, thereby increasing our balance sheets by over $2 million. And I've done that routinely in my career. So I think we're confident enough to know that we have the expertise to do what we have to do to make this work.
Mr. Policano?
I was just entertaining a proposal for a wording change. In each of the whereas statements, they have a will in it, but the will be changed to shall. Feel I'm more comfortable with will, shall, than will. Commitments.
I believe this language is dictated by the state, but let me check with the server.
It's not, I don't know that it's totally dictated by the state. I know we worked on it with Mark Fisher back when we originally set the motion up, and this is what most of the other school districts use. I mean, I don't know that shall would make sense in a lot of these places.
I believe the way the law reads, if you pass this resolution, no matter what it says, you can't go over the index. That's the purpose of actually passing it. So I don't know what you believe the shall would accomplish.
Well, usually the shall is more binding than the will.
If it's any comfort to you, this resolution, will and shall are identical.
Okay. Once you pass this resolution, you can't go over the index, and that's one of the reasons why we're throwing the dice when we do this. Because if the governor suddenly cuts the education budget, and that's the problem with Act 1 timing, the budget from the state and so forth, we don't have any idea what we're getting from the state yet. So there could be other cuts that we have to make if they suddenly cut the education budget. We don't know that. But this is locked into law by Act 1. Did that satisfy your concerns?
Yep.
Other questions on this resolution? Mr. Rhodes?
Thank you. Do we know what type of, how much we would get for qualify for exceptions this year by any chance?
We don't know, because unless you fill out the state budget form, which shows that you're exceeding the index, and then fill out their form, there's a program after that, which is for the exceptions. You don't know for sure, but I did an estimate, which I believe that we would qualify for about $750,000 in retirement contributions.
And that would be to cover retirement contributions specifically, would be earmarked for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions? None appearing. Ms. Birdsell, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Doncho.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller. Aye. Mr. Policano.
Aye.
Mr. Bacher.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Aye. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Okay. We will then anticipate having a budget discussion in March on the slower schedule now that we're not having to propose a proposed preliminary budget. I think that's the term for it. We're going for exception. All right, we'll move on to item number 6, report of the superintendent of schools, Dr. Thomas Seidenberger.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I'm going to ask Dr. Mirabella just to give the board and the public a brief update where we are with the influenza outbreak.
Good evening. Just a few things regarding the influenza-like illness. We've been keeping records now for the last few weeks, and each week it is reported to be on that weekly basis. And right now our elementary numbers from last week were 77 cases, and our secondary numbers from last week were 61 cases, for a total of 130 influenza cases in the district. And that comes out to be about 1.7% of our total school population. So we are well below the national average in regards to influenza in this district right now. The handout that you received is posted on the district website, as well as each nurse sends that home with each student who is sent home with suspected flu-like symptoms. And that information is provided to the parents, not only on the website, but personally to the parents when they come to pick up their child, or the guardian comes to pick up the child. We are monitoring the situation on a daily basis, and I met with our school district doctor today, and that was one of the one of the large topics we spent about 20 minutes talking about, and he's available for consultation at any time that we would need to address this, continue to address this situation with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Bacher?
You mentioned how we're doing compared to the national average. How are we doing relative to deaths? The idea is people say we're starting earlier this year and it might be more intense.
Absolutely. Last year, around this time, because we actually kept numbers 2 years ago when the swine flu was out, and we are actually below those numbers from 2 years ago. Last year, because there wasn't a large outbreak, we really didn't keep those numbers on a regular basis. However, Dr. Barnes gave us, he's our school district doctor, he gave us some idea, was very surprised because last year he saw one flu case in his office the entire time. And this year, he said, just alone today, he saw about 15. But most of them are adults as compared to children. It seems like it's hitting in the Lehigh Valley, even though the Lehigh Valley and Lehigh County has the largest flu outbreak in Pennsylvania as of last Friday, according to those statistics. It's more adults than children. Ms. Fuller.
And how about our adult staff? How is the flu affecting?
We look at those numbers. We don't actually keep those numbers because they're not required to share that with us of why they're out. But when they do come and we do check them, we offer medical services to them, obviously, if they're feeling sick or ill during the day. And I did keep those numbers a little bit to the side, but we were actually looking at 4 across the district as a whole for all 10 of our schools last week. For adults last week, whether that be anywhere from maintenance all the way up to the teaching professional and administrative staff.
Well, I want to congratulate the district for its flu inoculation program for staff that board members may take advantage of as well, which I have. And I sailed through the season. So thank you for the answer prevention.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Miller.
I think it's in this flu season, we put something on our website, and we certainly advise parents that if you suspect that your child has symptoms, please, the best thing you can do for your child and for others is to keep them home. I just passed out, I think last board meeting we talked about lobbying efforts. And last year, we had a variety of lobbying efforts, and we still will this year. But one that's already been released and one we feel very strongly about. I'm giving you a copy of a press release that we sent out from all the IU districts earlier in December, and I apologize for not getting this to you. But I think the most important thing, and I think for your edification and maybe your education as well, there's a third sheet. It has a scattergram that Dr. Robert Culp, the Assistant Executive Director of the IU, put together. And we sent out to the press. And as we mentioned multiple times, we're certainly in favor of Senator Brown's initiative to look at categories of special education spending. And we certainly endorse that. And based on the numbers you have in front of you and the attached article from the Morning Call, I certainly want to thank Steve Essick from the Morning Call for paying attention to this issue. So anytime you're around a state representative this year, the idea that you can pitch that person by really looking at special education funding. And we're not complaining, we're not whining. It is a simple fact of life. Special ed funding has been held harmless, which means no increase. For the last 5 years, we've talked honestly and openly in this district We serve every child that comes to us. But there's no doubt about it that our autistic population in this district has grown almost 100% in the last 3 years. Again, I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form we're not going to serve those youngsters. I think it's about time that the state wakes up and start to really look at the level of reimbursement for special ed. Dr. Picaric is in the process of redoing or doing this year her extraordinary aid request. Like every other year, it would be probably a max of $150,000 we'll get back. And we put in eligible reimbursements almost $1 million every year. And keep reminding, it's the local taxpayers that are paying for a mandate. A very important one, a very much needed one, but it's time now for the legislatures to take a look at special ed. And I think that's going to be our lead lobbying this year. And again, as you're out and about, hear the numbers and really look at them. So I would appreciate your support in this. And any other questions we can ask, any other data we can provide to you, let us know. And I think when we have our legislative breakfast later on this spring, we'll have one, right, Mr. Ballard? Yes. This will be an area that we'll really zoom in on. Other bit of news, and again, just in the communication of how things change, every once in a while, we've got to remind parents that certain neighborhoods, we can't take buses into certain neighborhoods because roads have not been dedicated. Now, the good news is there's a lot of things going on, and some more roads have been dedicated. So recently, we looked at our emergency bus route list, and we've had an internal meeting last week, I guess it was, and we're pleased to let the board know tonight that we're able to collapse our emergency bus routes from a page and a half to down a page or so, 2 pages to 1 page. We're going to be putting it on our website tomorrow. I'm going to do an edge link call to parents, letting them know that the new list is available. We're going to be sending a hard copy. I'll give the principals permission to send out a hard copy, and so they'll be enacted probably within a day or two. So if you're interested, if you lived in an area that traditionally gets flooded, this is for you. For a regular neighborhood, this is not necessarily for you. But if you live along Spring Creek, I would pay attention to this. Yes?
Would you mind briefly explaining dedicated? What should we
When a road is approved by a township or a borough municipality, they take ownership of it.
From the developer?
From the developer. And most people don't understand that. When you move in, check with your house to see if your road has been approved by a township or dedicated. If it's not, we can't drive a bus in it. Okay? I'm sorry. So we're happy that more and more roads are being approved and owned by the township. Or townships or boroughs, whatever. Also let the board know that we sent out some letters recently. We sent a letter of thank you to Rodale for their generous a donation for the all-weather track, which I think is on the agenda later on. And as we discussed at the last board meeting, we sent a letter to Mrs. Whitman, who made the original, voiced her pleasure with some of the books we're reading, so we sent her a letter about the disposition of that matter. Also want to tell the board that we sent out letters. I've asked Mr. Glancy, and he accommodated me. We sent letters to every borough municipality to gauge their interest in going out for some joint bidding for things like asphalt work, for things like concrete work. And I can tell you that we've got a little bit of good news on Friday. It looks like we'll be able to do some business, perhaps along in Huntley Township. And again, I've had success in a former life in going and doing this with municipalities, and who knows, we can save a couple thousand here and there on some projects. So I think it's something we'll certainly work with any contract with Mr. Fisher that we might have to do in terms of joint purchasing, but something that we're trying to explore. You know, taxpayer dollars come out of the same pocket, no matter if you're working in a municipality, a borough, or a school district. So we want to minimize that as much as possible. I want to thank Mrs.
Conan, for your comments about the bomb scare. It was a very unhappy day, let's put it that way. But I do want to thank some people who really responded, and responded well. And certainly all the officers from the Borough of Emmaus Police Department who worked with us, but certainly want to highlight efforts of Chief Dave Faust, Carl Gashwank, and certainly Officer Vicki Schaefer. They were here with us through the whole process. We want to thank the time that they spent with us. Their advice was excellent, and we enjoy a wonderful working relationship with the Borough Police. I also want to thank some of our East Penn custodians. In my opinion, humble opinion, went above and beyond the call of duty. That was Tom Gable, who just recently retired. Tom was retired, he didn't have to do that, and he did. That just shows you kind of employee that we have, and we're going to miss Tom. Dan Marsteller, Harry Brown, and Jeff Kettner. Also, an array of East Penn administrators were right there with over 30 volunteers from local fire departments and police departments who did the actual searching of the rooms. And those administrators included Mark Warden, Bob Ritter, Tom Arabella, Dave Pipparata, Sally Hanslick, Andrea Edmonds, Mark Acabo, Matt Gale, Laura Whitman, and Todd Briner. We thank those folks for really putting their love of the district on the line. As you can suspect, we're really working with the police department. We'd certainly like to apprehend the student. We invite any parent or any student to know something about this incident. We certainly don't tolerate this behavior, and we'll take all measures we can to prosecute the individual and to enact as much discipline as we can. Just an unfortunate situation, and at some point we're going to have to talk about making up that day. I'm going to pass out a little flyer, only because this is, I know a lot of time we talk about STEM here and what we're trying to accomplish. If you're interested in STEM, here's a little inexpensive night, but it'll be a very good night. I think we're going to take about 4 or 5 people from the district, and we'll certainly find our way to funding a board member. If you're interested in attending this night at Lehigh, February 5th, it's $10 a ticket. Let us know. I'll certainly put it on the agenda for approval at the next board meeting. But I think it's going to be an interesting night. I plan to attend, and I know we'll have some teachers going from our district. So if any board members are interested, let us know. And the more you learn about STEM, I think this is going to be it is a very hot topic for us, and any knowledge you get will be good for the district, for our students. Okay, I want to take a couple of moments to address some of the things we heard again from parents tonight, and give the board an update where we are with the Willow Lane busing. I mean, sometimes I think parents want answers, and they want answers now. Well, sometimes it works that way, and sometimes it doesn't. We did meet. We kept a track of issues that were generated at the November 27th meeting. We also took copious notes from those who expressed their opinions on December 10th, and we will get together with my administrative staff at our weekly Tuesday meeting and compare notes if there's anything new that we heard tonight. And I think most people can determine that the genesis of the parent survey that we put online at Willow Lane, and I'm happy that parents have noticed that we not only made calls, but we also put that in hard copy. We're sensitive to the criticism that we received. Although I want parents to understand, when we do an EduLink, and this is kind of like, Willow Lane parents should not take, I'm not picking on you, okay? Can we have a moment of humor? I'll want to move on to the high school. When parents say we don't get grades, we say, yes we do, because you had a parent who were able to check when you were into your parent portal. You certainly were aware of things. So when we send out an EduLink message, we can tell you what time and exactly what they, either someone answered it or your recording machine got it. So, and to answer the question about duplicates, we can tell if it's a duplicate survey form. We have our wherewithal to do that. So 2 parents want to fill it out for the same family, it's only get counted as one. We can do that. Okay? I know. Sounds like Big Brother, but we're not that bad at technology. And I know you've had great conversations with Mr. Earl. So we looked at those issues. We also generated a list of issues which we shared with Mr. Fosselman. And I'm going to just be blunt. A lot of the issues that parents come up to the podium and talk about, we're certainly concerned about because we are concerned about safety. A lot of those fall into the spectrum of the township. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. It's not like we don't care. It's just that signage is not something that we do. Crosswalks are not something that we do. We work very closely with the township, but that's like a line of demarcation. So one of the things that we're trying to do is then work with parents on issues that we can control. And therefore, the results of the survey will be very vital. And as some parent, I forget which one, and I'm sorry, someone recommended December 10th that we should take a volunteer from each one of the neighborhoods and form a little advisory committee with Dr. Moore. We're going to do that. And we're going to take and look at those issues such as kindergarten dismissal times and traffic and things like that and really work through those and get back to parents. And I think working in a small committee with Dr. Moore and of course Dr. Mirabella, Mr. Glancy will be ex officio members of that little working committee. Then we can go back and report back to our board and also Dr. Moore can communicate to parents. So I think this survey is completed on deadlines January 22nd. We'll compile the data. And much like we do with our rounds teams, Dr. Moore is prepared to have a public drawing for those parents. We don't want anyone to think that we're picking favorites. So if there's 10 people from Graymore, we'll have a public choosing of 1 of 10 people. So we want to be extremely transparent and fair when it comes to deciding who's going to work with Dr. Moyer in a small group. With that in mind, I also want to let parents and the board know that we had a very productive meeting with representatives from Lower McConkey Township on Friday. We worked for almost 2 hours. Dr. Mirabella was with us, Mr. Clancy, Mrs. Campbell, Dr. Moyer, and our engineer, Paul Sweezick, was with us. And why we brought our engineer is because township engineers were there. So it was time to talk about changes and about accommodations, all those wonderful things that engineers talk about. And I will tell you that we were very pleased with the reaction, and by the way, there was a state policeman there as well. Representatives from the fire department, Lower Country Township, and I would tell you if we sensed that there were problems with our plans. And I'm very pleased to tell you tonight that our traffic alterations or the change in our patterns were well received by the township engineers, and so very happy with that. We talked about minimal redesign of bus turnaround areas in Willow Lane. No problems with that from the township engineer. And we talked about actually shifting the driveway a little bit on the Mill Creek side that will make it safer walking for students who want to enter the building that way. All those accommodations, I think, were received in a very positive manner. And so we will go forward. That was one area we talked about. We also then talked about signage. And one of the things we looked at long and hard was the walkability recommendations. We talked about that. And I think what the next step is that the people from Lower Country Township are going to take that under advisement. And we've agreed to meet within 3 or 4 weeks. They want some time to talk about their recommendations internally and also to the people they report to. But Bruce Fossman and I have agreed that perhaps at some point a joint statement of all these agreements would be in everyone's best interest. And we've even had the offer that perhaps our engineer and some of my staff will talk before the township commissioners, and also if our board wants, Bruce and his folks can come and have that conversation with you as here as well. One of the things we talked about was making sure that when we speak at meetings, it's all with one voice, and we will do that. So that if you come here, you're going to hear the same information from the Board of Education as you'll hear from the township commissioners. And so we're going to work very, very hard at that. We also talked about the crosswalks and where they're located. And I think, in listening to some of the parents, I think we've got another crosswalk at this point. I don't want to hang the township out, but I can tell you that we listened to at least one of the concerns about one of the areas, and I think you will be pleasantly pleased that we're going to be adding another crosswalk and an area that will have a crossing guard as well. So this dialogue does work, and we do pay attention, okay, with that. And then people have to understand, we get asked all the time about cost. Here's how it's going to work. Dr. Moyer knows that we've offered some additional time for some of his support staff. And we will do that in next year's budget. We will make sure that some of our people are trained and be on site, very visible, to help the supervision, and we will absorb those costs. We haven't made a final determination about crossing guards. Technically, they are the responsibility of the township. However, we've had a great working relationship, and I'm going to leave that open-ended at this point. The signage, crosswalks, all those expenses are borne by the townships because that's the way it is. All the signs that are put around Iyer, the signs that are put around Northern Country Middle School and West Hillsville, none of those were paid for by the school district. We will, however, be absorbing costs like the gate that will not permit parents to take a shortcut to our school property and cut down the driveway near the firehouse. We will pay for that. We will pay for any relining of parking spaces in the parking lot of Willow Lane. So we'll take care of that. And I think if you paid attention last board meeting, we will present to you all those costs associated with the district's responsibility as part of our transportation report. We've worked with Paul Swuzak on this project for many more months than parents and board members understand. We anticipated that. We had Paul design the walking paths, the maps that were very helpful to the walkability study a long time ago. So we've made those investments in doing the right thing. All I can tell you is that we will continue to listen, we will continue to react, and to refine these plans, and ultimately our board and their board of commissioners are going to have to make some decisions, but we feel confident that we will cross every I, cross every T, dot every I, cross every T when we get to this. And maybe now is the time for a little bit of editorializing. I certainly understand that this has been a very difficult process for some folks. And, you know, we hear things too, and some of the things we hear are well received, and some sting a little bit. And, you know, one of the things that I think hurt a little bit was the notion that perhaps this school wasn't designed as a walking school. I came to this district and I asked some tough questions within the first 2 weeks of when I was here. And that's one of the first questions I asked. Why didn't we have traffic lights? Because in my last school district, I built a school and we put traffic lights in. I asked those questions. I'm proud of what I do. The answer was the same as I get recently. There wasn't enough traffic to warrant a traffic light. Those things are $850,000 to $1 million. We don't do traffic studies. I'm not passing a law. But there's some sheets, and I just want to highlight some things for you so that when you're out and about, and I've been at this long enough to know that people are going to believe what they want to believe, but when board members are out and about, and you might be in Giant, someone says, well, was the school designed as a walking school? The first sheet you have, the first two sheets, are from the Act 34 hearing, which was held exactly 1 week before my arrival in the district, 2 days after my birthday. My birthday is August 4th. This is August 6th. So I'm going to remember this. For those who don't know what an Act 34 hearing, it is a requirement when a school is being built, right before you go for final approval of the Pennsylvania Department of Education in the Plan-Con process, you must have a legal hearing. Mr. Fisher runs the meeting. There's a stenographer present. Anyone who talks at that meeting, their comments are recorded and they're forwarded to PDE. There's a book that's available. Anybody comes to the meeting, you get a copy of the book. If anybody wants a copy of that Act 34 hearing, please give us a call. We'll gladly provide you with a copy, even though it was in 2007. Page 5 of the document. There it is right there. We've outlined it in yellow. Thank you, Ms. Birdsall, for your work today. Appreciate that. So people have to read it. And I think if you take a look at that last paragraph, you'll see that there's a reference to students walking. So that was made public in 2007. Also on the next page, there's a reference to sight lines and east-west orientation of the school, and enough area for people to drop off students, the buses, and for walkers. So perhaps we can end that debate that the school district was not going to have kids walk. I can't say that for certain. So there's some evidence. Now I'm responding that this is something new or recent. The next artifact I have for you is you have, I just passed it out. Mr. Vince, you know, I passed it out. You're right there. Turn the page. I don't have one in front of me. Here, okay. There's a map of the school that was published in the fall of 2008. Clearly, we marked for you that drawing, which we put on our website, which was out, part of all official drawings, clearly marked walking paths. Now, talking to the architects, I can tell you that that was a requirement in the design, was that the school district had to provide walking paths in that school. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to point a finger at anyone else. I'm just going to move on. The next artifact I have for you is my letter that we wrote, and I will explain again publicly. Two things. As we approached the opening of that school, we were, I'll say this again, we were very nervous about that school being finished. One of the areas that we expressed great concern about was that walkway in the front of the school was not done. And we were very concerned about not getting a temporary CO. So, and we knew that. So, in early July, we made it, yes?
You explained the temporary CO?
Yeah, a certificate of occupancy. And we were concerned about some of the things not being done, and then what we were going to do. That school, you always get down to the limit. I mean, people were building that school missed a lot of timelines. Trust me, Mr. Bach, you weren't here, but it was a great time for us. And so one of the things we made an executive decision that we just thought with the building not being done, it was going to be a little bit chaotic. Opening a brand new school, having all these students come together from a variety of schools. And one of the things that we didn't want to do was cause just more chaos than what was necessary. So we did think about student safety. We thought about those things. And so I wrote a letter that we mailed to every parent at that point in Willow Lane, expressed and said, basically you have a 1-year waiver. Now, I've already explained publicly that I dropped the ball superintendent year 2. And I've taken, I've admitted that some on the pressure of the budgets, we need to come back to that year 2, and I take full responsibility for that. No one else, just me. So I didn't go after the township. That was my mistake and my error. But I also want to let parents know that this notion that it's strictly about budget is dead wrong. And you need to stop believing that this is about budget. In my letter, I clearly referenced the fact that parents and students from Willow Lane were going to be treated no differently than parents and children from Albertus, Jefferson, and Lincoln. And this is a state of fairness that we don't transport kids within 1.5 miles in other schools. Now, to go back in and make sure that's happening, we are looking at every bus route. And I can tell you right now that my bet is that we're going to have parents that are a little unhappy with us next year because we're finding some things out in our audit. And we're going to come back to you with some recommendations. In fact, I've already informed a principal of another school that there will be some changes, but I will meet with that principal individually and another principal to tell them that perhaps next year some of their students won't be transported. And those two schools are not part of our East Penn family. So, but we're going to make sure, and that's what we're in the process of doing. The next document is, people want to know, how come you dropped this bomb in the township? Bruce and I have a wonderful relationship. So does Sarah Panley. I will let the board and the community know that as early as October 2010, we were working on walkability studies with the township. This board passed a resolution supporting that, looking around the table, not picking anyone. Stoltz, you voted yes. Mr. Policano, you yes, voted yes. Mr. Earnshaw voted yes. Mr. Ballard, yes. Mrs. Foley, yes, and Mrs. Hyde. You all voted yes to go into that partnership. So I don't think this was any great surprise that we were thinking about walking. So again, I want to assure the parents that this is not something recent. This has been 3 years in the making. Now, one of the reasons why we did the walkability study was that we were really sensitized last year that people said, well, you don't really have a plan. Well, we did have a plan. Maybe it wasn't as good as the one we have right now, but we had a plan. Things weren't going to, basically, in essence, the plan we have, outside of changing some driving patterns, is the same one that we conceived 3 or 4 years ago. The only difference is now we've had another set of engineering eyes look at that. And so we are very happy and very excited about the walkability study, because in essence it did validate that what we're thinking about has some merit. Now, is it going to be tweaked? I can make the prediction that most likely that's going to be tweaked like any other report. It's a recommendation. Now, our commitment to the board and to the parents involved is that we're going to continue our work. We have a survey. It's going to be expected to be completed January 22nd. Tony Moore is going to take the data. We're going to work with them. We'll give you a full copy of what the results were. There's nothing to hide. There's some open-ended questions there. We'll give the board, we'll give the families, we'll print the report, and Tony will form a committee, and they'll work through all those issues that are germane to us. We will continue to work with the township. As I mentioned before, I felt very good leaving that meeting. Mr. Clancy and Dr. Maribel, if you want to add anything. Mrs. Campbell, I think we all felt very good leaving that meeting on Friday. We made a lot of progress. Not really progress that we firmed up some understandings, because we've been working with these folks for a long time, and I can tell you honestly that the things we talked about last spring, last summer are basically the same now with some minor tweaking and some improvements. And what I can assure you from the Board of Education is that we're going to leave no stone unturned in our transportation study. And I want to emphasize our transportation study. I talked about that last March. So the transportation study is not a result of the Willow Lane situation. We heard some grumblings that, well, it's just about, no, it's not. I made those comments last March 27th. In fact, I think there was an article in the Morning Call in the Patch the next day that East Penn's going to look at busing from top to bottom. And we're doing that. And there's going to be some unpleasant things that we found. Some of the work that we've done, we need to shore up. We really need to work with first student. And as I said before, we've only talked about doing things with high school students. I think our recommendation is going to be maybe we want to have some meetings with parents, and maybe we want to talk about parking passes and transportation. And again, we'll have some information for you and look and see if we can emulate what other districts are doing to cut down the cost of transportation. In our transportation report, we have promised that we will not only look at students within 1.5, but as a person, again, I apologize, what person you talked about 0.75 miles, we're going to be doing that. But we're also going to give you a cost for looking at transporting not only Willow Lane students within that parameter, but students from other districts, because I would think, other schools, I would think that you as board members would be hard pressed to say, we'll make an exception for one school without making an exception for other schools. And we'll have those cost estimations for you as well in our report. So with that, I'm going to end my report, Mr. Ballard, and say that we will continue to work through this process and give you information as we get it.
Thank you, Dr. Seidenberger, for your far-reaching report. Now are there questions for Dr. Seidenberger on his report? Ms. Sanchez.
Yes, thank you for the full report on especially the Willow School, the transportation. I'm looking forward to the study. I'm glad that we're doing it. It's nice to hear that Lower Macungie is committed to the signs and those things that the parents are worried about. You know, there's a lot of energy being expended on a lot of people's parts on this.
They have to make the recommendations. Okay, so I don't want to lead you to believe that. We've talked about it. They're going to make the recommendations. That's where they are.
Okay.
Looking back, that's why we want to talk with one voice, rather than saying, you know, commitment is a strong word, and to me, we have a commitment when I have 5 votes. I'm sure Bruce will tell you he has a commitment when he has one more than a majority.
Right.
So that's, if we can agree to use that word commitment at that point.
Okay. But I do have one question. Is there any reason that the school has to be a walking school with as much conversation as there is around it and the discussion, even if the safety aspects are put into place as far as the crosswalks are and the signs go, which, you know, I think most people agree, you know, needed to be done anyway. Is there any underlying reason, or is there any reason at all why it must be a walking school?
Well, as I just related, one of the things I think you as a board member need to be very careful of and very cautious of is a sense of fairness. And the same arguments that these good people will make tonight. My question to you, throwing it back to you, Mrs. Donches, how will you respond to parents from Albertus, Lincoln, and Jefferson? So I think we certainly can put that on the table and talk about that. That's why in our transportation study, we're going to give you that data as to how much it would cost certainly to transport every kid in this district and those within 1.75 miles. And so I guess if the board says provide transportation, we'll happily provide transportation.
There were never like applications made that we said it wasn't walking school or anything like that. Any applications for like to be considered a reading school or anything like that? We didn't have to say we were a walking school.
Well, we reached silver status. I do not know, but we'll go back and check with our architects to see if there was anything in our silver status that had to deal with walking. I don't know about that. And I don't know, I'll find out for you. But I can tell you this, that the walking paths were part of the design. And I can also tell you, I'll give you a weird kind of answer, but it's true. At the same time we were building Willow Lane, we also had a renovation project going on at Iyer. And there were no requirements for walking paths or sidewalks because I don't think anybody, with the exception of a couple homes in the rear, would talk about Iyer being a walking school. Okay? I think you might want to examine me if I would come out and say, I think we're going to make Iyer a walking school. I wouldn't do that because it's just not, there are not enough sidewalks around. If you look at my letter, we talked about those areas that have sidewalks. And there will be students that will be bused. Willow Lane, we talked about that last year. Over the kids that live in Shepherd Hills. That's dangerous. Okay. And let me also tell you that we're going to, in our report, give you a definition of what a hazardous road is, a technical definition, and we're going to give you a list. And we don't declare, neither does the township, what a dangerous road is. That's determined by PennDOT. That's determined by PennDOT. And they have a rating system. So we've always said if somebody wants to call PennDOT, they're free to call PennDOT. They have a list.
And then just one thing, I looked at the survey, and it says if you'd like to be involved in the community, but there wasn't a place to put their name. So do you know who they are? Just like
yes, we do.
Oh, okay. I didn't do it.
There's we can tell.
Okay. That's what I thought you referred to earlier, but I wanted to verify that.
We do a survey. Whether we put a name or not, there's always a way which we can check back to see who sends the email.
Other questions for Dr. Seidenberger and Mr. Stoltz?
Yes, Dr. Seidenberger. I was very encouraged to hear that a committee is being put together that will involve members of the public and basically Tony Moore's Blue Ribbon Committee. I'll call it that for lack of a better term at the moment. Have you considered the suggestions from the public that members of the board and possibly members from the township should also be included in that?
Not at this point. I will tell you why. Because the things that we're talking about are technical. Now, I don't have a problem when we come back and we tell you what the final technical, with the signage and things like that, then I don't have a problem at that point. I mean, we're at the stage now where we're talking about engineers, people who do this for a living, who do approvals. And they work in, not Mr. No, I think beyond that. I think we want a greater group, and we're not prepared to do that at this point.
Okay. That answered my question.
When we come back with a total picture regarding crosswalks and signage and things like that, there wants to be a public discussion of this. I don't have a problem.
Okay. And I just would like to respond to the question that you posed to Ms. Don Chesnut. You basically posed it to all of us how I'd react as a board member if I were hearing from parents from Albertus or any other school. The same way I'm responding to these parents here, with every bit as much concern and due diligence and attention to their concerns. Because as a board member, that's my job. That's what we're elected to do. So if they had concerns, I would be listening to them. These parents showed up and let us know. That's the only way we know when we hear from the public. That answers your question.
Other questions for Dr. Seidenberger? I'd just like to reinforce a couple of facts out there so that everybody is on the same page. The first item is that the state has determined what is considered to be a transportation distance of 1.5 miles. The state reimburses school districts for any transportation of students, normal education students, above 1.5 miles. And it's not a full reimbursement. They reimburse us partially for transportation of those students. They do not reimburse us for any transportation of any student except for a special education student, where the distance is less than 1.5 miles between the student's home and the school, even if the roads are dangerous. So they've declared that 1.5 miles is their radius for reimbursing for transportation. So that's one of the things. So even if the PennDOT determination is that the roads are hazardous, you still don't get any, as I understand it, any reimbursement from the state for any student less than 1.5 miles from the school. So there's one of the considerations. So that any transportation of a student less than 1.5 miles, no matter what the determination of the road is, falls on the local taxpayer. Totally. The other thing is talking about making applications, as is shown in Dr. Seidenberger's report. We did make an application for a grant for studying the safety of the walking roads. So we did that back in 2010 in October, and there was an article in the Morning Call the next day very cleverly worded, I suppose, by these headline writers, Willow Lane students may be hoofing it. That was the title of the article, and it basically stated that an estimated 400 students at the new Willow Lane Elementary School in Lower Macungie could be asked to walk to school in the coming years if the school district and township ensure there are safe paths for them to follow. That was the basic tenet of that article. So it has been almost 3 years since, 2.5 years since we've had that information out in the public, even beyond the letters that Dr. Seidenberger showed. And also that I would like to point out that the drawings that are shown, one of the drawings shown in here, the Plan-Con drawings and the drawings submitted to Lower Macungie Township, especially since there was a requirement to have walking paths, showed walking paths. So at all those times that we made official submittals to the state and Lower Macungie Township Planning Commission, there were submissions that showed walking paths. So that's just information that's a fact that's out there. Are there any other questions for Dr. Seidenberger on his presentation? None appearing, we'll move on to item 1, which is 6.1, which is personnel.
Including the addendum?
Including the addendum.
Second.
Are there any discussion of item on 6.1? None appearing, Ms. Birdsell, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Gannon. Mr. Earnshaw, Mr. Rhodes, Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller. Mr. Politano.
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
9 ayes.
All right, we have item 6.2, acceptance of the Rodale Family Foundation contribution.
We left it with 6.3 since we were
Okay, we can do that. Does anybody have any objection? Ms. Sanchez has objection, so we'll do 6.2. 6.2, a motion, please.
So moved.
Are there any discussions on item 6.2? None appearing. Ms. Birdsell, will you call the roll, please? And I'd like to thank the Rodale family for living up to their obligations that they promised us, at least $400,000, and they made the final payment with this payment. Ms. Birdsell, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde.
Aye.
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
I will abstain since I work at Rodale.
Ms. Fuller.
Aye.
Mr. Politano.
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
8 ayes, 1 abstention.
Ms. Sanchez, you will file the form with Ms. Birdsell. Okay, thank you. Item 6.3.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on 6.3? None appearing. Ms. Birdsell, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller. Mr. Politano.
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Item 6.4, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on 6.4? None appearing. Ms. Birdsell, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller. Mr. Politano.
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
9 ayes.
All right, we have item number 7, the Tax Increment Financing Committee resolution submitted by Ms. Sanchez. Ms. Sanchez, do you want to introduce it on the floor?
Yes, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Ms. Sanchez, would you like to explain this motion, please?
First of all, I'd like to excuse the grammatical error in number 3, where the tax is going to be its Penn School District, our public money, and not his. Should this resolution be approved, it would provide the opportunity for any interested citizen to attend the meetings of the TIF committee, which will meet regarding the proposed Hamilton Crossings project. During the September 24th meeting, in response to my question as to whether the committee meetings would be open to the board, Mr. Fogel had responded no. However, since the committee is made up of public officials from the 3 different entities and the public monies will be diverted for the project, I believe that the meeting should be open to public. And I understand from my conversation with John Kingsley at the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation that the TIP committee members make the decision as to the meeting structure. And therefore, I've submitted this motion to ask the boards to direct Dr. Steinberger and Dr. Bacher, or if they would, since they are our elected representatives to the board, to the TIP committee, and in the spirit of openness and transparency, if they would support and bring before that committee that the meetings be open to the public.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher, I believe you wanted to speak on this motion. Unless someone else wishes to speak, but I think
A couple of things, and I'm not playing the part of the grammarian. That's not. I get the gist of what you were proposing. The concept of a tax increment financing, I think this is the first one here in East Penn, unless anybody can tell me otherwise. So it's a new concept for us as a group. Just a couple of comments regarding the first 2 whereases. Then I'll address specifically the request to have it made public. And again, this is absolutely not to be a criticism of you personally, but just for educational purposes for everybody. If you look at the first whereas, the way you have written it, it was that the committee is formed in Lehigh County, comprised of representatives from the school district, the township, and the county. So that you as a board understand, by statute, what really happens is and according to the statute's language, the Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority meets with representatives of these 3 entities. It's really not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a committee of just the 3 entities themselves. And that's what the statute says. And why that's actually significant is because it's my understanding, and I've spoken to people from these committees, including Attorney John Bruches, who was here and spoke at the last board meeting. We'll come back to him in a moment. The actual work is actually done outside of that physical meeting, if you will. There's actually subgroups that are formed which actually go through the hard numbers, check the financial information that's provided, and it's actually done by an independent agency, paid for by the developer. You may recall that from the presentation. So most of the work is actually not going to occur at that meeting or meetings where the representatives are meeting with the 3 entities. So that makes it somewhat difficult to decide, is there to be a public meeting when they do their internal number crunching? Is that supposed to be part of this motion? The other thing that I would point out is that in the second paragraph, you reference that the TIP committee will consider using taxes from the district to support the infrastructure. While this may sound technical, I want to remind you that's technically not accurate because what they're doing is that they are using the concept of tax increment financing, which is somewhat different from saying using taxes because it's the increment, it's the increase, if you will, that the taxes will generate as a result of this project, and it's perhaps some percentage of that. So it's not taking taxes that currently exist from the school district. So that's a technicality. I just want board members to remember that as you go through this process. Now, to the issue of whether or not it should or shouldn't be public, I'm not sure it was Mr. Fogel who answered your, I thought it was your question when I saw the motion. I think it was actually Attorney Lucius who came to the microphone and said, and to remind everybody, he is the solicitor for the Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority, and they're the ones who are convening this meeting with the representatives. So when you ask that question, I believe it was him who actually spoke and said, no, it won't be public. But irrespective of which one of us recalls correctly, I think you also need to understand that when
that when the Industrial Development Authority approached Lehigh County for their representatives, and I know this to be a fact, there was a couple of different requests by members of the commissioners, Lehigh County commissioners. The upshot of their request was that there was some consideration, that there was a suggestion that they would condition their appointment of a representative to the fact that on the fact that there would be public meetings, and they were told by the solicitor from Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority, Mr. Lucius, as well as some of the other commissioners who are aware of this, you can't do that. You can't condition the appointment of your representative to the fact that these will be public meetings. And the reason is really simple. This is one of those cases in which there's situations when there's actually been a court case. There was actually a court challenge filed in Washington County, Pennsylvania, about 5 or 6 years ago, seeking to have a TIF committee, seeking that a TIF committee have public meetings. There was a proposal that was brought forth, I believe it was involved the Trinity School District among other parties, in which they wanted to put one of those Angier's outlets, I'm not too familiar with those things, but a bunch of hotel restaurants, and some citizens, among others, brought a court challenge saying, we want those meetings to be public, and the TIF committee meets. And the Commonwealth Court ruled a very strong opinion that there's absolutely no requirement that those meetings be public. I won't go through all the legal explanation, but the long and short of it was the court noted that, among other things, there's no legal requirement to do that, number one. And number two, there will be public meetings associated with this project. In fact, there are multiple meetings that have to be heard in the public. We've already seen one here in the school district when the Industrial Development Authority came. They made similar pitches to both Lower Macungie Township and to the Lehigh County Commissioners. Those were all public meetings. In addition to that, there will be a requirement once the work is done by that committee, that there will be a public hearing on the matter. There will be a public hearing held in Lower Macungie Township. In addition to that, there will be public meetings here in the school district as well as before Lehigh County, in which the issue will be brought forth whether or not it should be whether or not the proposal should go anywhere. So there was a recognition by the courts that there are multiple public meetings on this subject. One of the other things that came out of, the other matter that came out of it when it went before the Lehigh County Commission was that there was a commitment from the representative of Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority that there will be minutes produced of those meetings and that they would be shared with each of the entities. One of the Lehigh County Commissioners then made a suggestion that it should be posted on the county website. So again, so that none of the, whatever came out of it would not be public. As to your final comment that you spoke with someone from, I believe you said from the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation, if I recall what you said, there's some question regarding whether or not Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority, different entity than LVEDC, Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation, will bring to those parties who it will meet with whether or not it will be public, whether or not it should be public. They've already on record here in East Penn as saying it's not going to be. When Mr. Lucius spoke, so it's already indicated it's not going to be. If you're correct that it was Mr. Fogel from the Goldenberg Group.
I did check the minutes, so yeah.
As I said, if you're correct, I didn't reread the minutes. He's already indicated that this project, that it's not going, that he does not want it to be public, and I think Mr. Lucius concurred that it has never been public in all of his years of experience as well. So, aside from the education aspects of your motion, I really don't think it's an issue before this board tonight. And the other reason I would say that is if in fact that this committee decides will consider whether it should or shouldn't be public. There may be reasons why they think it should or shouldn't be that we don't know about right now. So it's almost premature in another sense. There may be good reasons why it should be. There may be good reasons why it shouldn't be. It may depend upon how they structure the meetings.
Right, so if I understand you correctly, they don't have to be public, but they can be public if there's an agreement to that among the calls.
I think that's a fair way of saying it. If all agree, and we've already heard from at least one of the parties, they're not going to agree.
However, if the entities involved, and thank you for your feedback on this and your instruction and education and so forth, if the resolution was worded, perhaps more clearly, and if representatives from all three entities were approached by their public or by their governing body, suggesting and encouraging that the meetings be public for the citizenry, that I would think would have some impact, or hopefully have some impact on their thinking and possibly be open to having the public meeting. And when I say public meeting, I guess I'm not thinking of bogging down the process, as was mentioned in the article, with a lot of people perhaps coming to the board, but sitting quietly in the room and just taking it in. As you know, there's nothing like hearing anything firsthand.
Yeah, but as you well know, if I may, it's a public meeting. The public has the right not only to attend, the public has the right to make comment. So any suggestion that it should be a public meeting in the sense that the public can sit and listen only, that's not public. That's not
but
public
if it's input. Structured and the director, whoever in charge, or the committee themselves can they can dictate or limit the amount and time spent on public appeal.
The answer is, well, in my opinion, from what I've heard already, it's not just the three entities, the county, the township, and the school district who control this. But even if they all wanted to say it's public, it won't be public if Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority runs this meeting, says it won't be.
And I guess what I'm asking is that the board ask its representatives to encourage those who are running the meeting to have a public, to encourage them to have there be public meetings.
Well, that's not what this motion says.
I would need help wording it then, so that I know, this is just the first run through, and I would need help in wording it to communicate that to the board, and then they in turn to the people in charge of the meeting.
Could I ask the solicitor how we can do a motion to encourage someone to do something?
Pretty much.
We have to reword this whole thing, and with due respect, I'm not sure. I'll rephrase that. We'll take that back. You've already heard at least one entity who's involved in this process saying it's not going to, we will not agree it's going to be public. And that one entity, Golden, they have every right to say that.
Well, he did say that at the podium, but then there was an article in the paper, and it kind of like
I only know what I hear
happened
in
a little bit.
I only know what I hear in statements, but I go by it. As you said, that's what Mr. Vogel who said it. I take your word for that.
Let's get someone else into the conversation, because we have Mr. Stoltz who's been waving his hand over there.
I can wave my hand for as long as it takes an attorney to. May I suggest that perhaps, well, to establish a couple of things before I suggest anything. There will be TIF committee meetings of the whole at some point that are not these subcommittee meetings where they're crunching their numbers and so on. Yes.
I think presumably that's correct.
We could, as a board, if we so chose, direct our representatives to, for lack of a better way of saying this, do their darndest to make these meetings public. And if they can't do that, then so be it, but we can direct them to encourage that behavior, yes.
I think in rewording this
rewording the proposed motion, some way, somehow.
Theoretically, there would be no legal problem with doing so.
I think theoretically you can ask, theoretically, I think in practicality it's going to be over, but theoretically.
Well, then I would suggest, as Don says, decide whether or not this is a friendly amendment, although I suppose I get a vote on that as well. That the East Penn School Board of Directors direct their representatives to the TIF committee to support making all TIF committee meetings of the whole public, open to the public.
I would agree to that, those changes.
So as I understand the motion as it's now on the floor, the
East Penn School Board of Directors instructs its representatives to be, directs its representatives to the TIF committee. Do we need to be more specific with the name? Okay. Directs its representatives to the TIF committee to Seal, you just want to read back to me what you have there. And let me try to pull that out.
Committee of the whole to support making all comments of the whole open to
Meetings
the
of the whole.
meetings of the
TIF committee of the whole.
open to the public.
Yeah, that works. For me.
All right, and you're the seconder, so you,
yeah.
Everybody says it's an amendment. Okay, now we're discussing that motion. Okay, do our TIF committee representatives have anything to say, one way or the other?
I've never been involved in this. I mean, all I can tell you is what I've read in the Lehigh County Commissioners meetings, and it seems to be that these things have always been handled the way they've always been handled. So I can't make a comment about something I don't know about. I mean, if Mr. Fisher said it's a court case, I'm sure there's a panel of judges that ruled in that. There's probably got to be a compelling reason why they made that ruling. And I don't know that because I never read the case.
Mr. Moffett?
Actually, I thought, as a member, I thought a lot about this, and I think this is a potentially tremendously important agreement. I don't know how it will end up, but it has the potential of reducing the percentage of property taxes paid by residential customers as compared to residential taxpayers of the district as compared to business taxpayers. It's something so that we have to, I think we are taking it very seriously, but it's something that I think is important. I think it's important even if the meetings aren't public, that we share as much information as we can on the process as it's going on, and even solicit input from, I don't know yet whether in this meeting or something else, from citizens that are concerned about this, not only to share information, and especially if there's misinformation, make sure everyone understands the process, but I personally appreciate having other people think about things. I'm a smart guy, but I know I won't think of everything, and I appreciate that Ms. Sanchez supplied a packet of information about TIFs, and I read that all, and I would appreciate receiving input from citizens of the district regarding something that will potentially have a big impact on the district and our future finances. I'm also concerned, I've never been a part of one of these TIF meetings. I don't know the structure. I don't know, as Mr. Fisher said, people may come to the meeting, first meeting, with reasons why they should be public, why it shouldn't be public. And it's hard for me, although I am a firm advocate of transparency, and I believe it's especially important in a case like this, I don't yet know what those arguments are going to be for or against. I would like the flexibility to listen to the arguments and make a decision based on the arguments. On top of that, I don't know if we want to say, I mean, I would be willing to come up with, once I hear the constraints on the committee, especially if it's something, as Mr. Fisher said, could be the case that regardless of what we want, it's going to be a private meeting. Those are going to be private meetings. Perhaps that our representatives, once we have the initial meeting, can come back to this board and propose how we are going to provide transparency and forum for public input. And I would prefer that rather than having in mind what the best way to provide for public input. I think we've already heard here, I've heard in the past concerns about, I mean, this is a public meeting with sunshine laws, and there are people that are concerned about the lack of interaction. So people can say things, but they're not sure they're heard. And I would be committed to either after a meeting or something, provide myself to interact with people who have concerns about this issue. I do feel strongly about it. And one of the things that concern me is, I'm not sure that this resolution is the right way to achieve the transparency that I believe in, and I think you and Mr. Stoltz wants. So I'm hoping we can agree to something else, because I would like to be able to go to the meeting and vote my conscience if we have a vote on it, or if we don't, at least find out what constraints are legally placed upon us and come up with a proposal that makes everyone happy in terms of transparency of the process, keeping the public in the loop on how the process is going, and taking input from the public. That's my opinion on that. So I don't know how to. I don't know how to change this or how we would want to incorporate that. That is my view. That I do believe this needs to be transparent. I do believe we need to have buy-in from the public, and part of that is having them in the loop. And so I think this is very important, and I'm committed to that, but not knowing what I'm going to hear in the first, we have not had a meeting, not knowing what I'm going to hear in the first meeting, I'm concerned about having a conclusion when I haven't had. I mean, certainly if we pass this, I will do what it says, but I could be placed in a position where someone presents a very good argument contrary to this that I didn't know about, and I will have to say, thank you for your argument, but I'm ignoring it. And I would hope not to be put in that position.
I would like to put my 2 cents on the table and just talk about some general principles. One, this thing would be attempting to tie the hands of our representatives into certain positions. And I'm always finding it hard enough to get volunteers for these various things without having them face the possibility that they'll be directed to do something or other when they volunteered to do this probably thankless job. And so I'm concerned about resolutions of that, setting precedent, trying to tie the hands of our representatives. There are going to be plenty of public meetings, as the solicitor said. First of all, the TIF committee that we're talking about meets with the developers and under the authority of the Lehigh Valley Industrial Development Authority and attempts to put numbers together to formulate a plan. And then it gets a tentative plan, and it submits that plan then to 3 different bodies who will each have a public hearing on whether or not they accept that particular plan or not. And all 3 of them have to agree before the plan can be put into action. And that's Lehigh County, Lower McCountry Township, and the East Penn School District. All 3 public bodies which have public meetings with public input and advance notice of what's on the agenda and all of those kind of things. And as far as I know, legally in Pennsylvania, Mr. Fisher, there's only one definition of public meeting under the Sunshine Law, which says that if you have a, quote, public meeting, you have to provide for public input. There are no public meetings where you can sit and just listen and you have no opportunity to speak. There's only one definition of a public meeting. So again, that begins to turn some of these working meetings into potential for a media circus rather than a working meeting to get the details out of what the actual revenues are, what the required loans are, what the length of time is going to be for the loans, and all these other arcane factors. It's the package that the public is concerned with. What is the length of the term of the TIF? What is the percentage of taxes that will be foregone, which is not old taxes, it's new taxes. So for instance, right now, the property that we're talking about gives the district about $7,500 a year in taxes. And some estimates of the taxes from the eventual shopping center are more like in the $500,000 to $1 million range. And so it's a question of what percentage of those incremental taxes would be used to finance the infrastructure improvements for a certain period of time, after which they would expire, and then the whole kit and caboodle of taxes would go to the financing district. And it's not saying we lose any of the $7,500 that we would presently get from that property. So it's not any lost taxes. It's a question of foregoing a collection of a certain amount of taxes for a certain period of time. And that's all part of the structure that's got to be worked out and agreed to by the Lehigh Valley Industrial Development Authority and the representatives of the developers and the representatives of the three entities before they even begin to think about submitting that for public meetings to the three entities that are involved. So there will be three, at least, public meetings with plenty of input from everybody concerned. And so I think that's plenty of public meetings. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is resolutions of this type may get people to believe that our representatives are somewhat compromised in their ability to maintain confidentiality such as it is in these meetings. And if that's the case, then either they don't participate or don't participate fully or something like that in terms of the people who are making the presentations, and questions could be raised about our representatives, and I don't think that that should be there. It's one thing if the representatives decide in a meeting to suggest, hey, why don't we make these meetings public? We're not being forced to do so by our board, but we just thought it was a good idea. That's one thing. It's another saying, I've been told by my board that I have to tell you that we need to make these meetings public, and that makes a whole bit of difference in what's perceived as to the value of our representatives as to whether they have to go back to the board every time they want to discuss anything in the meeting to get a direction as to how they're supposed to proceed and whether or not they're able to keep things confidential and all that. So from that and from the solicitor's analysis of this, of the court case out there, I can't support this motion in any form. So that's my opinion on the subject. So now we'll go to round two. Mr. Earnshaw, you haven't had an opportunity.
Yeah, there are a couple of issues here. First of all, public meetings go way beyond public comment. They have to be advertised at least 3 days in advance, except in the case of an emergency meeting. Minutes have to be kept. The minutes have to be approved by the body. There are a number of other things that are required for public meetings. So it's not simply having input from the public. It's also important to remember that we do not have final say in the proposal that's brought to the district. The proposal is brought to the district by the TIF committee on how much of the total cost of infrastructure for the project will be paid for through the tax increment financing. And then it's up to the district to decide if we want to agree with that and what percentage of future revenues we would forego to pay for the infrastructure improvements. The public doesn't get a say in that. The county doesn't get a say, except for the participation of their representatives. It's not like we have some kind of collaborative body where all the documents are brought back by our representatives and we pore over them and we decide, yeah, we think it makes sense for this part of the infrastructure to be part of the TIF, but not this part. That's done by the committee, not by the governmental bodies. We get the opportunity then, once the committee has done their work, to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and if we decide to participate, what percentage of future revenues? I want people to be pretty clear, from at least from what I've read and what's been told to us. It's not that we are collaborating over this issue. We will get the opportunity to review that proposal, just like the other governmental bodies involved. It will be a fully public meeting. We'll certainly welcome input from the public. We'll welcome, I'm sure, a robust discussion over the issues when it comes before us. But it's not like we're going to be contributing to the collaborative recommendation that's brought back to us, except through our representatives voicing their opinions there. So I think that I'll stand with Mr. Ballard on this one and with Mr. Bacher. I'm willing to give our representatives the maximum flexibility to participate as they see fit based upon the information that's presented to them.
Ms. Sanchez, you had your hand up.
Mr. Ballard, you had mentioned, if it's one thing if the representatives go and raise their hand and say, let's make these meetings public when they get into their group. Okay, let's make the meeting public. I guess this is a formal way of me saying that Mr. Bacher and Dr. Seidenberger go to the meeting and say, gang, let's make our meeting public. Let's invite the public in. I understand, though, what's involved with the scheduling and the posting and so forth. I think we've seen it, especially, with the busing, maybe with some issues that have come before. People do want to be involved. People want to hear firsthand as much as possible to be in the loop. They're very active. They care very much about what's going to happen. I think this is going to be a big issue for this area. My concern is, and I have only read the law in short order, but it says the governing body of a municipality which will create the tax increment district, which I guess that would be Lower Macungie Township, hold at least one public hearing. So if they only have to have, technically it says they only have to have one, and that only 5 days before that public hearing, each of the decisions by each of the entities has already been delivered or decided. So they have already decided upon, the school board, the commissioners, and the county commissioners decide and then deliver just within 5 days of the public hearing whether they're going to opt in and opt out. So when you come to that public hearing, as a new person, maybe you haven't had that much information. It's a lot to take in at a public hearing and then to make comments. So what I'm saying that it would be great if the meetings were open to the public where they could hear the deliberations so that they're educated and informed along the process. So it doesn't feel or like something that's coming very quickly. Because then not earlier than 3 weeks after the public hearing, the TIF district is created, and people are going, oh, what happened? It sounds so fast, and what I'm trying to eliminate is maybe the situation like we've had with the busing or other issues where people don't feel like they're being educated and informed along the way. So however we can formally say, Dr. Seidenberger, Dr. Bacher, when you go to the meeting, raise your hand and say, we'd really like these meetings to be open to the public. That would be great.
Other comments? Mr. Stoltz.
Ms. Hyde, you haven't spoken.
Oh, okay. I didn't see your hand up.
I didn't really raise it that high. I was unsure.
These decisions are not easy ones, I think, for all of us on here, just because I always write my pro and con list. Gosh, I've been doing this since college. But my pro list to go for this would be definitely that it is an open forum. We are government. We are run by the people, the public voice. But as I'm sitting here, I'm also listening to some cons that you know, Mr. Bacher's going to be on it. He's not comfortable yet with this motion, so I think it's something maybe we should consider later if it doesn't pass. And the whole trust thing, I'm a little bit offended maybe that we don't trust Dr. Seidenberger and Mr. Bacher to come back to us with the information. And the other thing I want to mention is we have subcommittees at LCTI, and they're not open to the public because we don't have a majority. They are open to the public, and what we do all the time is we come back and we announce everything that we talked about in those. How many people come to the subcommittees for the public? Yeah, 0. This whole time I thought they weren't open. So, so that's where I'm kind of pro and con, and I probably won't make my decision to the last minute at this point again, but I can see where this is a big issue because a lot of people are concerned about this tip, for the tip, and against the tip. Thank you, I just wanted to have my 2 cents in.
Mr. Stoltz?
Unless anyone else.
I haven't seen anyone else.
All right. I understand that the point of view may be for some of the people on this board that if we take such a strong stand on requesting that these meetings be open, that we might just, lack of a better way of saying this, scare off what essentially would be a big bag of found money for their steps. A lot of money that we're not currently getting in and would be coming in if we approve this TIF, if the developers come in and decide to build their home here. My point of view, and it is a matter of trust, is in essence they're asking us to give them a tax break for a temporary period of time in order to build their business in the first place. And that, to me, sounds like the burden of proof and the burden of transparency is on them. Why do they get special rights that these folks didn't have when they were building their homes? You know, they're paying property taxes. Why weren't they allowed to have a certain portion of their property taxes go towards building their home or their businesses if they've got businesses leased on? The developers here are asking for special privileges, and therefore they should be encouraged to meet a standard of transparency with the public. There's a lot of members of the public that have issues with this, of every political stripe. I certainly do. And I think we were pretty clear that that we're only asking that these committee meetings of a whole be made public. Would it be enough VT for more members of this board to support it if the word directs were changed to encourages? I'll yield the floor there, and if anyone would like to comment about it.
Mr. Earnshaw.
Just to correct Mr. Stoltz, the developers are not getting a tax break. They will be paying the full tax millage rate of the assessed value of the properties they build. Part of those dollars that they pay would go towards paying bonds. They go towards building infrastructure. It's not a tax break. They're paying the exact same amount they would pay no matter how the project got constructed. It's just a question of whether or not the public wants to participate in certain elements of infrastructure. That could be things like they talked about the new exit from the 222 bypass, could talk about environmental remediation, and those are the items that the TIF committee will come back to us for. So let's be clear about it. It's not a tax break for the developers. It's a question of whether the public participates in any part of the infrastructure cost to make the project possible. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you. I would just like to thank Ms. Sanchez for submitting this motion before the meeting and getting it out to us so we can think about it and look into it, and I thank you for that.
Mr. Fisher wishes to.
Just a couple of statements made by a couple of people. I just want to correct it, just for so we all learn together. That's the spirit in which I offer my comment. In no particular order. In the end, it will be the Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority that makes a recommendation. Not the school district, it's not the county, it's not the township. They will make a recommendation as a result of these committee meetings, number one. Number two, in addition to that, the Lehigh County Industrial Development Authority is going to be required to prepare what's called a project plan. And that's a defined term under the Act, which has to contain 9 specific things. And you're going to get to see that. That's going to be a public document that you're all going to see. Third of all, there is technically one public hearing. We talked about the terms public hearing, public notice. Public hearing, public and public meeting. Public hearing and public meeting mean 2 different things. Public hearing is required to be held by Lower Macungie Township, and it has to be advertised as required under the Sunshine Act, and that's specifically required under the Act. And there has to be a public hearing notice at least 30 days in advance of that hearing. So there will be ample time for the public to be aware of the public hearing. But separate and apart from that, each entity, including this school district, has to have has to vote on it at a public meeting. It's not a public hearing, it's a public meeting. Different requirements under the law, but for your purposes, members of the public are going to have the opportunity to come up before this body right here and say yay, nay, or whatever. That's their right. And they're going to see in advance of that all of the same information, including the project plan, because it's going to be made public. I think I stopped counting there, so I mean, it's new, so it's okay if we're learning together.
It's new to us.
It's new to us here. I can only speak for those who've done this in the past, and I can only tell you that it's been reported that the people who've done this have never had public meetings I'll call it the TIP. I hate to use the word committee, but that's how it's referred to. In fact, one of the consultants spoke at the Lehigh County Commissioners meeting and said he'd been involved in 20. There were never 20 of these in the past, and none of them were ever public. They were never advertised as public. I think that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just making that observation for your benefit. So, with that, I yield the floor back, and so we take a vote.
All right. Ms. Birksell, will you call the roll, please? And first restate the motion and then call the roll.
The East Penn Board of School Directors direct the representatives to the TIP Committee of the Whole to support making all committee meetings open to the public.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Can I clarify? I think, if I may, I think the motion was that all meetings of the whole committee.
I have that.
Okay, and maybe it's just the way it came out. Maybe it's the hour right
Okay. Mr. Earnshaw.
Nay.
Mr. Rhodes.
No.
Ms. Donches.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller.
Let me say I enjoyed the conversation, but the answer is no.
Mr. Politano.
Aye.
Mr. Blocker.
No.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde.
No.
Mr. Ballard.
No.
6 ayes, 6 nays, and 3 ayes.
Okay, I'll make my legislative, oh yes, policy 609, sorry. Ms. Sanchez, do you want to enter this?
Yes, so moved.
Second? Mr. Stoltz? Ms. Sanchez, would you explain the reason for wishing to have the policy revised? By the way, you have all have the current language of the policy in your packets on exhibit number 5.
You may recall at the October 22nd board meeting that we approved an investment of funds that was purchased in August of 2012. And it was actually purchased on August 13th, 2012. There was a board meeting the evening of August 13th and 4 other meetings, August 27th, September 10th, September 24th, and October 8th, before the transaction was reported to the board and a motion presented for approval. And I am just proposing that the board be apprised of the investment transactions at the board meeting, which most closely follows the transaction, when the transaction was made.
You had a specific sentence you wanted inserted.
Yes, the board requires that the treasurer report all transactions to the board at the board meeting immediately following the date of the transaction.
And that would be added to the guidelines?
This would be on our East Penn School District Board Policy 609, investments under number 3 guidelines.
Okay. And the current motion, because we have to have a first and second reading of any policy decision, we couldn't just throw something out like that. So then Mrs. Sanchez is asking that Board Policy 609 be reviewed by the administration, any other changes that they need to make, put in, and then the suggested change perhaps included in the policy revision. And it's a question of whether the board wishes to proceed ahead with that and invest staff time in doing that. So what are other comments? Mr. Bacher?
I just had questions. Do we know why the delay in reporting this? I know there's no requirement, but do we know what happened? Was it other things were going on, or?
What happened is I felt it because I thought I might be making some more investments, and I didn't want to bother the board with every individual investment promotion each time that we make an investment. So I was just holding it, and I get more than I need more, so I just put it on the agenda then when I had a chance. I have no problem with giving to the board as soon as possible. However, I want to let the board know that if an investment is made the day of a board meeting, I mean, normally we have to give things to seal almost a week in advance before an agenda to get something on the agenda. It's not like it just can be put on the agenda after the agenda's already been drawn up.
Point of order, Mr. Ballard.
Yes, Mr. Stoltz.
Two things. I believe we do things like that as an addendum now. But first of all, I just wanted to possibly correct you on something.
What is an addendum, Mr. Stoltz? I don't understand.
We could, if there were an investment made the day of, it could be an addendum on the policy that night. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. I just want to correct you with the, I have in the past submitted policy markups like this, and they've been done for a first and second reading, any amendments by the board, but they have not been submitted back to the administration for any additional work.
I don't recall such, but that's fine.
Mr. Earnshaw, I think you were board president.
I don't recall the The normal policy is that we have the administration forward the revision to us, and then we vote on it and make comments on it in the first and second reading. Are there any other comments on this motion? Mr. Earnshaw?
Excuse me? Is it still my turn? I just asked a question.
Okay, I see. I thought you were sorry. This one.
No, so I got the answer to that. On the other side of things, these are relatively safe investments and non-volatile investments, treasury bills and certificates of deposit. And what? They have to be by law. And I'm just curious, on the other side, we're talking about investing some time for a couple of readings. I'd like to hear what the harm is of this investment that went a couple months before the board was notified. Again, what's the, given the circumstances, what is the driving need to make this change and invest the resources in that?
Are you directing that question to Ms. Tompkins?
I guess I'm directing it to you to ask someone to provide the information from the board.
Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Ballard. The specific language is not in question on this motion. You shouldn't be debating or discussing it. The motion before us is whether or not to submit the policy to the administration.
Well, I'm trying to make a decision on that, and submitting this to the administration to work on it he's going to expend resources, and I'm trying to balance, you know, it's probably a minimal amount of work to do this and to read twice, but I'm trying to balance that against what's the intended benefit, and I'd like to hear from someone who supports this to understand what's the intended benefit if we change the policy, so I can decide whether I want to have the district invest probably minimal resources, but some resources in drafting and us discussing it twice for 2 readings. So that's what I'm trying to, and I would like to hear before I make my decision, what's the benefit of expending those resources, small though they may be.
Okay, I guess that would, the question would be put to Mrs. Sanchez.
Yes, I just felt that there was such a time lag in between, and you know, in the rare, unlikely situation that it could be voted against, that the monies would have been invested for already 2 or 3 months before it was put before the board. And it's true, it's unlikely, and it is safe, but in that rare occasion that it could happen, it just seems that it would be prudent to have it announced right now.
Mr. Earnshaw?
This policy is 20 years old. I'm always in favor of having a new set of, you know, fresh look at policies. I support having the administration take a look at it. They may come back with recommendations for no changes.
All right. I would point out that we do authorize in a motion earlier in the year a list of places where the office can deposit money on these investments. And so that they are already authorized to move money between those accounts and our general fund in order to try to maximize the interest we receive. It's not like this is going to some unknown group of institutions that we have not previously authorized. It's only a question of how much money goes where, when, and I personally trust the business staff to try to find the best return on our money, but that's neither here nor there. Mr. Bacher, I take it you want to say something else?
Yeah, now I don't understand. I don't think it would make any sense. I can't see that our policy would be, if someone thinks there's a change, they direct the administration to review it, and the administration comes back with, we don't think there should be a change. I don't understand how we would change anything, how we would direct.
We make changes to motions when they come in first and second reading.
Okay, so they would potentially, but if they're not requesting a change, would we have a first reading of a policy that is unchanged?
We have had in the past.
Okay, so if we direct them to do this, then they will come back either changing or unchanging it, and at the first review, we would have to have
If we didn't like it, we would have to change it.
Okay, and that's the point where we could adopt whatever plan.
We adopted it in the second reading.
Well, I'm sorry, we could.
You can wordsmith it right down to the last meeting.
Okay, and at that point, the, regardless of what the administration thought of the reading, those changes would come in the second reading, and that's the purpose of the 2 readings.
Yes. One of the things is to submit changes, and they have to give some rationale for why they did or did not change the policy.
Okay.
So that's what they come out at the first reading. We make suggestions to wording. They come back a second time, they may have they probably do, and then if we even don't like it then, we can change the wording before we adopt the final resolution.
Appreciate the added information.
Okay, Mr. Stoltz?
Mr. Fisher, correct me if I'm wrong, but the board has fiduciary responsibility over all investments, and they're therefore liable.
You have fiduciary responsibility.
Okay, that's the rationale behind it, as best I can tell. Second, may I suggest that the administration or anyone who's in charge, possibly Mr. Ballard, go back and take a look at how this was done previously. The specific occasion was when I submitted policy markups with regard to archiving audio tapes. Just so we know in the future how this is done.
I think we have a policy, it's 003 if you read it.
I would be sure to take a look, but let's just make sure we're consistent in the future.
Any other comments? All right. Ms. Bertzel, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
No.
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller.
No.
Mr. Politano.
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Aye. Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
7 ayes, 2 nays.
Okay, I'll get now to the legislative. They're forming up in committees now, and we expect the budget back and forth to begin sometime in February when Governor Corbett puts forward his budget. He's promising a few surprises, so we'll have to see what's involved in there. I personally expect some more sleight of hand claiming that the education budget is going up when all it's going up for is PSERS and Social Security payments. No basic funding changes to education, but we'll wait and see what happens. So right now, there's nothing definite about any bills. Everybody's just jockeying for position on the committees and trying to sound out some of their fellows for other political moves that they want to make in the legislature. So right now, there's not much to report on from the legislature. Any questions? None appearing. We'll go to business operations. Is there any objection to moving items 1 through 6 together?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on any of the items? None appearing. Ms. Birdsall, we
Hold it.
sort of all wants to say. I wasn't looking far enough.
So members of the administration noticed that there's a typo on number 4 with penal language.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I did that too.
Well,
You realized my rate was
it's not $555. I wish I could get that. Okay.
We're so close.
But that typo is accepted as a friendly amendment, I presume, by anybody who approved it. Nothing else appearing. Ms. Birdsall, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Sanchez.
Aye.
Ms. Fuller. Mr. Politano.
Aye.
Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Mr. Stoltz.
Aye.
Ms. Hyde. Aye. Mr. Earnshaw.
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes.
Aye.
Mr. Ballard.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Is there new business to come before the board, Mr. Stoltz?
In light of some of the discussion that was had tonight, I would move that we do this tonight, but if you rule it improper, I would like to see it on the agenda in 2 weeks. Resolved that the East Penn School Board of Directors instructs the administration to include continued funding to provide busing for all Willow Lane Elementary students who are currently receiving district transportation as part of the budget preparation for the 2013-2014 school year.
That definitely is an improper motion, and we'll submit it on the next agenda, Mr. Stoltz.
Be fine.
You could have submitted it over the email or whatever.
I was waiting to see how the conversation would go today before I did so.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hyde?
Real quick, there's something that we spoke about at LCTI. We heard that some of the other boards are going paperless even with their packets to the board members and got it.
Board docs.
So it's something maybe we can consider in the future. It doesn't have to be immediate. I know everyone's really busy and I know summer's really busy too, but something to think about for our board.
Yeah, a lot of the districts are looking at a system called board docs.
Actually,
We'll look into it.
I didn't notice that, but I was thinking about that. The minutes also have the bulk of the agenda, so, I mean, the minutes packet is huge. So I think that would be a good
We'll
idea.
bring you back information on board docs. There is an initial startup cost.
And there's a cost of potentially supplying every board member with a laptop and some other costs that have to be considered.
Would it have to be, I know that we do loaner ones that we don't take home with us.
Yeah, that's a possibility too.
Okay, because
It's
I don't
still
want another
required.
laptop, I tell you right now.
There's a way we can set up just a station to work the board game.
Just some information on it. Yeah, give me like 7, no problem. Thank you.
Mr. Stoltz?
2 questions. Sometime back, the board voted to direct the administration to prepare a report on webcasting board meetings. I would just ask for a progress report.
We are. We're looking at, we talked to some other school districts and they're engaged in some things that we have some questions about, but we'll be ready with a proposal pretty soon.
That's I'm glad to hear that. And my second question is, last year, even though the board voted to not direct you to prepare a zero alternative budget, you did provide a series of cuts that would have resulted in that. Would you be willing to do that again this year?
I don't know, I have to think about that. Obviously, Mr. Stoltz, we were not happy that we put a lot of work into that, and that work was not even considered. So that, I'd wait and see where we are in the budget, and I'll take specific information, but we didn't spend a lot of time on that. As far as I know, that didn't come up in any discussion, any board meeting last year.
I will give some thought to putting language requesting that happen, but I'm sure it won't pass. But I'll give it some thought.
Submit it in the regular process.
I understand that.
Anything else? This evening we had a clear session prior to this meeting to discuss legal matters, to discuss real estate negotiations, and matters of confidentiality. There are some announcements there that are also we noted that we're Martin Luther King Day. All schools will be closed on Monday, January 21st, and our next meeting will be on the 28th, I believe.
Yeah.
I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.